Welcome to INL and welcome to this summer school organized by in the framework of the TrustEat project. Welcome to Marta Prado that is coming as well. Well, just to say a few words about why we are doing these projects and what means or what we can expect from this summer school. Well, first of all, probably all of you know that the future of the food system will be digital for many reasons, but will be digital. And digitalization of the food system means to harvest information from each step of the food value chain. That means that we need at least two things. First, to have devices, to have hardware that harvest this information, and second, this data, and second, to convert this data in information to manage properly the food value chain. This is the framework of this TrustEat project. This TrustEat project is to create awareness, to learn how to connect these physical layers, this constellation of sensors that will be placed in the food value chain with this digital layer that came from these blockchain technologies. The applications of this concept will be really broad in the next years, and we need to be prepared for this transformation of the food system. So the idea of this week is to have some knowledge and to learn about how we can use these technologies, blockchain, sensors, in this smart way to connect and to digitalize the food system. At the end of the day, this is the continuation of this Industry 4.0 that started some years ago. Okay, so it's the next step. So it's not only to connect machines and devices and equipment to internet, it's how to use that to optimize the processes in the fabrication of foods. For this week, we will have very good speakers from IBM, from Wageningen, and from other places. We have as well attendees from INL and as well for other places. The idea is not only to be passive attendees to the conference. So the idea is to take advantage of the conference to discuss later on during the coffee breaks and during the other social activities that we were prepared for all of you. So it's my pleasure that to start to start this advanced course summer school in the TrustEat project. And right now, Nuria, she is the boss of this project, will explain the details of the project and the agenda for the next days. Thank you.
So, hello, welcome everyone to this second edition of the TrustEat Summer School. So, as Lorenzo was saying, I'm going to present a little bit what will be this week. I mean, not full week, but 4 days. So today we have here the agenda. So there will be introduction with a presentation of our colleague Hugo Oliveira, and then we will have 2 online presentations from 2 companies that are working already with blockchain and food in the use case of wine. Then later on, after lunch break, we will have our colleagues from Wageningen, Lan and Mireille, that will be speaking about business models and user involvement and customer journey mapping. And then later on, we will have a tour, and as we want to do some social activities also in this summer school, we are having a cocktail and a wine tasting that will be led by Natasha Fontes from Sogrape. Then tomorrow we will have our technical workshop. So here it will be a more practical experience for you. So from INL there have been some developments that they would like to show you so that you can see how this blockchain can be applied. Then on Wednesday we will continue with some lectures. So we will have an invited speaker from Sapienza Università di Roma. And then also on sensor data fusion. And we will have also a presentation from Marta Prado from INL on advanced miniaturized devices and its use. And then finally a machine learning and digital twins presentation, online presentation from Ioannis Athanasiadis from Wageningen. And then later on, in that afternoon, we will have a visit to a winery that it's in Valencia, so 1 hour from here. So later on, if you haven't registered for this visit to this winery with wine tasting and food, you can do it. It's for free. And yeah, just let me know today if you would like to participate so that we can confirm the number of people. There will be a bus departing from here. And the last day will be an online session. So we will have 2 speakers. They are in our advisory board of the TrustEat project. And they will be speaking also about use cases in the food area. So, well, just a small intro about the project. Many of you already know, but for the new ones. This is a Horizon 2020 project funded from the European Commission, in which there are no research activities, let's say, but more training and coordination and learning activities and interaction. So it's a 3 years project. We are in the 2nd year. If it's the first time that you hear that you are participating in TrustEat, we have many sessions recorded in the website, so you can still follow them. And yeah, we will finish in 1 year from now on. And participants is INL, IBM, and Wageningen. So the objectives are threefold. The first one is to link INL with these 2 other entities, IBM and Wageningen. We select them because we were looking for the most reputed entities that were working with blockchain technologies and agri-food research. So IBM is one of the most reputed centers in Europe focused on future chip technologies. They have developed a platform that it's the Hyperledger Fabric platform that provides a foundation for blockchain solutions. And then also Wageningen is the top 1 university in the world in the area of food, agriculture, and environment. So we think that they are the best ones to lead us in here. Then other objective is to boost, therefore, the innovation capacity of ourselves, of INL, and increase the impact and visibility of our research activities. Because, well, you know, at INL we have many sensors development, so we think that we can learn how to link them with the food system. So in practical terms, the project is divided in 3 areas, depending on the number of the profile of the let's say the target audience. So it's experienced researchers, early stage researchers, and project managers. At the beginning, we have seen that we have quite a similar experience, experienced researchers and early stage researchers in blockchain. So that's why we have merged a little bit this. And project managers is more from people like me at INL that are either working with projects or the finance or the projects and grant management and innovation management too. So these are, you can see here some of the activities. So we have the summer school, we have technical workshops that it's merged with the summer school, we have virtual trainings, visits, secondments, it's an important part. So if you are from INL and you think on participating in a secondment in IBM or Wageningen, there are three places available. So of 4 months, so this is a very good opportunity. And yeah, then we have a think tank that we are gathering every 6 months with different people from the area, of the region, to discuss how to implement blockchain in Portugal and Galicia and Spain. Yeah, and other activities. You can follow us in LinkedIn. We have a group that it's TrustEat, and there we all the time informed about our activities. And then Lorenzo, if you would like to continue with this more technical part.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, so the idea in this project is to connect these two layers. So the physical. So this is the reality. So this is the food value chain, the field of application from the farmer to the consumer, and the idea is to create a constellation of sensors that harvest the information about what is happening in each step of the food value chain. So the idea is to have a full control about what is happening through this process. The point here is to create sensors that generate data that could be transformed in information for managing properly this food value chain. So the idea is to be more sustainable, to avoid food wasted, to optimize all the steps of the food value chain. And the idea at the end of the day is to have the possibility with this blockchain technology that every single stakeholder of the food value chain could have information about everything related with this food or with this or what happens during the transformation of a raw material in a final product. So the idea at the end of the day is to empower all the stakeholders in the food value chain. So we are talking about, in this case, physical layer. We are talking about sensors based on different technologies, optoelectronics, molecular biology sensors, graphene, electrochemical sensors. So different technologies that we are working with here at INL that could be used for this objective of monitoring the value chain. But we are working as well about materials that could be used for labeling, for harvesting as well information like structural color, printed electronics, photoluminescence, metasurface, plasmonic, functionalized substrates, but as well devices, RFID antenna, microfluidic assays. We will have some talks related with this. So all these physical layers should be connected with the reality. So to monitorize safety and quality. So mostly safety and quality, we are talking about pathogens. So the microbiological quality of the food, so microbiological status is very important to guarantee the safety of the food products, but as well chemical contaminants like toxins or right now allergens. So we can have all this information using these sensors, but as well for authenticity and traceability. Creating fingerprint materials or creating systems that allow us to guarantee the authenticity of this product. For many products, these authenticity and traceability issues are a key point in the, from an economical point of view, from the commercialization, because the fraud and the counterfeiting problems are really a big issue for some companies. So, and everything will be connected by this digital layer. So using this technology, we can, or we will be able to manage this amount of data and to create awareness and to create trust and to provide availability to access to this information without any change or any problem that could modify the information that we harvest. And this is more or less the overview of this summer school. So this is the framework, and this is the topics that we will develop during this week.
Thank you. So now it's the turn of starting with the presentations, and our colleague Hugo Oliveira will be doing an introduction of blockchain in the food area, so what we have learned so far.
Okay, good morning to everyone again, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to see these faces. Most of them will see them online for quite a long time. This is, I will try to introduce you to blockchain. I should make a disclaimer that I'm not an expert on blockchain at all. You'll find some in the room and some at the coffee break, but not at this stage presenting. And the idea is try to give you, an overview and a little bit of course, my interpretation of what I've learned so far during this project about blockchain and how can we use it or can we adopt it in different cases. Okay. Is the presentation already on? Okay, perfect. So if we look at this origin of the word blockchain, we definitely could see something, in the word that's a chain of blocks, and this is probably the easiest way to try to start to think on the topic. And basically, if we can oversimplify blockchain, we can see it as like a spreadsheet with the different rows, and we are adding rows and increasing the spreadsheet and adding registers. But how can we do this, and why blockchain is very different from other ways to adding rows to a spreadsheet? And probably this is the challenge that I'll try to give you, to explain you a little bit. So when we have a transaction, so each block of data that also contains previous information just add on top, and each block is connected to the previous one, so it makes this very unique, and the transactions are linked together in an irreversible chain, and this is what probably makes a blockchain unique. So we have kind of along the time, on our timeline, we have an accumulation of the information in a unique way. And then we'll also have a very different characteristic, which is the decentralized way of managing this that I will try to brief you later on. And we have a kind of jargon in the blockchain. This is some of the words that you probably have heard about or you have listened at some point. The block, the cryptography, the distributed versus decentralized, the peer-to-peer, the consensus, and so on. So along the next slides, I will try to give you probably some small introduction to these elements. And if we think about keeping records, we know that this is very important in our life. That's where the concept of the ledger started. So keeping the records. In the 7th century, a banking ledger was a book like this. Today you have this on your phones, most of you, this app. And along the time, we always have the need to record and to keep the information updated and ready for being used at some point. And how blockchain works, and the difference on blockchain is that the ledger so the ledger is kept, is shared and is kept in different places at the same time. So if we think kind of trying to define blockchain, we could define as shared immutable ledgers, of course, that facilitates record transactions and tracking assets if we think on a business case. And the idea, of course, is that everyone that participates in the blockchain has a copy of the ledger, and everyone is in the same page at the same time. So the ledger is shared, is immutable, and we can, of course, record transactions and tracking assets. So everyone is at the same page at the same time. And why blockchain? So probably, you will definitely know a bit more in the next presentations about the different applications, how blockchain can be used. But definitely blockchain has this main characteristic. So trust, accountability, and transparency, which means that everyone is accessing the same thing at the same time. So the concept of peer-to-peer that we know from other applications, but this is definitely the two, let's say, different ways how we can manage and share information. So this is a centralized system where there is a central database and then different people, machines, or different users access the information that is in a single point. So this is controlled by a single entity. And in a peer-to-peer network, all the information is distributed, and no one is actually in fully control of the information, but we'll find some ways to have access to the same information. So the peer-to-peer removes intermediaries, so we don't need a central entity to control the information, and also creates transparency. And of course, then it also can maintain the privacy, and this is something that really will depend on the type of blockchain that is used. So over the TrustEat project, we have been playing a little bit with some use cases and some potential applications, and we have been discussing a lot also about the wine. And this is trying to just explain you the difference between a classic or tracking a classic system without blockchain. If we want to track, for example, the wine ownership, this is let's say a classic supply chain where the wine grower, the winemaker, distributor, retailer, and consumer, they all have the wine, but each of these entities have their own records, so their own ledgers. And even sometimes you have a regulator that actually has to control the quality and so on. So every single entity has a ledger, and when you transfer the ownership, each of these actors in the supply chain has to maintain his own records. But in contrast, if we think also on this the same chain based on blockchain, so everyone will share the same ledger, okay, and each of the actors of this supply chain will be, of course, a nodes, and will be interact with all of the others, keeping the exact same way of keeping the information. And also, we may also have other features based with blockchain. For example, the smart contracts that is kind of a programmable way of transferring the asset or transferring the money after a certain step on the chain that also can be linked with the blockchain. It's other feature of the blockchain technology. And now a word about the block. And I already mentioned at the beginning that the information is keeping along the time. Each block contains also information about the previous block, and basically what the information is transformed in a hash, which is a code. This is commanded by an algorithm. This is where the cryptography enters in the blockchain. And of course, this is also, you have a timestamp of the valid transactions, which means that, of course, we can follow along the time the information, and keeping the integrity of the previous blocks also. And you should think also that all the blocks will be then distributed by all the members of the blockchain. Then, thinking again on the Excel or Google spreadsheet and adding the line. So then we'll of course need the consensus to add the line. If you need to add the block, we need to find a consensus that everyone in in the network is in agreement about the way if the information is shared with everyone. So then this is definitely changes according to the blockchain type, but basically the different nodes have a degree of accuracy of the distributed system. So basically there is a consensus that makes possible the information to be added to the blockchain. Okay, and there is verification and validation. This is very different, and we'll discuss the different types of blockchain in the next slide. And especially when we are talking about the public blockchains as the cryptocurrencies that are working in a very different way that most of the blockchains that we'll talk about today that are mostly private, and they are based on a series of stakeholders. But basically, I think the basic concept is trying to see that it should happen a consensus in the different participants in the network that make possible to add the blocks and make sure that this block of information is added to the original one, to the previous one. Then the digital framework. So where this happens. So of course the concept, there are different digital frameworks where blockchain can be implemented. This is some examples, but I believe that most of them, they share the main features. But basically this is the way to facilitate the implementation of the blockchain concept. And of course this is the digital framework where then the different stakeholders, the kinds of information that is needed to introduce there should be there. Then about the blockchain development process, I'll be very brief here because we'll have experts in the room that will discuss that in detail. This is one of the slides that we discussed before in our previous workshops. And there is of course, a development process that is quite needed. And I think this is probably the secret to build blockchains that can work and can be useful. But definitely it's important to identify the problem and try to see if blockchain is the right solution for the problem. And it's very important to look at the different aspects of the problem and then to see if blockchain can definitely add value to that particular problem. And you already see this slide just about the project and how to connect the different areas of, especially when you're talking about the food area, but the application, as I mentioned before, this physical layer that Lorenzo already mentioned about the different aspects of sensors, materials that could provide information, could be sources of information that can be then used by a blockchain in this digital framework that I've mentioned before. And then, of course, this interaction. So, of course, we have the blockchain framework, but we also have the Internet of Things where the sensors and the properties of the materials can be also as a source of data and then information. And, of course, these elements can be also used to increase the knowledge about the system or the supply chain that we are working with. And this is exactly the consequence of this interaction, which is that we collect the data, but then of course all this interaction can also increase the level of original information and can give you a completely new perspective about the problem that we are solving. And this is another slide that we discussed also before, but I would like for you to focus particularly on this first column, which is when blockchain can be a useful tool and which kind of problems can solve. And this is probably the composition of these two main problems and opportunities that blockchain can address, definitely. And can address then very different topics with very different applications, from the risk management to the supply chain traceability and so on. So, but I think this is important, especially the things related with the trust, and blockchain can be really a very interesting tool to solve the lack of trust between the different stakeholders, and also, of course, to then maintain and keep the records in a way that could be useful for all the actors of the chain. And I'll also give you an example that I found really interesting because it's very simple. You can just read this small text that is in the web. It's about how Walmart Canada uses blockchain to solve the supply chain challenges, and the challenge was quite simple. So basically Walmart has more than 70 third-party freight carriers with 500,000 shipments per year. And they had problems with the invoicing because overcharges happen, completely related with different aspects: the weather, the traffic, the time that is required for the shipment, for the delivery. And they had like 70% of invoices requiring, reconciliation effort. So need to be rechecked and to reanalyze to see what is the exact amount that have to be paid to the company. And they implemented a blockchain, just mostly based actually on the data that already existed, but they do not interact. So data from the suppliers will not interact with the data from the customer, in this case, the Walmart. And they made a blockchain to make all this information work together, and they reduced this reconciliation effort to 1%. So, and very easy to solve because all the information is there, and it's just a matter of double check some aspect that could be not, paid attention at the beginning. So very simple way of doing this. And then finally, some conclusions. Definitely blockchain is a unique ecosystem that can be really transformative in different areas, as we see in the previous slide. And definitely the trust, accountability, transparency are probably, I'd say, the main features of the blockchain. And and then we'll know a little bit more, or not a bit, a lot more about the implementation and how the assessment for this implementation, the planning, it should be taken in consideration before being implemented. And that's it from my side. The good part is the reward. After listening me, you'll have a coffee break. So thank you for your time and attention, and very welcome to answer your questions. Thank you. And yeah, and I see this is like a small book. This is my Bible of blockchain, okay? You should try to, you can download this for free. It's from IBM, Blockchain for Dummies. It's very, very useful if you want to know a little bit more. I learned a lot, and I used some of the examples actually in my slides. So yeah, thank you. Everyone is looking for coffee.
Hi everyone, my name is Mireille. I work at Wageningen together with my colleague Lan. We'll introduce ourselves later. Yes, Hugo, you mentioned when you showed the slide of the wine chain that all participants in the chain have their own ledger. I was just wondering, I can imagine that there can be multiple systems in each organization that have information that you want to connect to the blockchain. So why did you call it a ledger?
Yeah, more on the aspect of the records, okay?
Okay.
Yes, more on this aspect, yes. All will have some kind of method for record the transactions or the way how they build, the product at some point. Yes, it's more on that perspective.
Yeah, you can imagine, I think, an enterprise resource planning system or anything that they have for not only financial but also logistical information. So that can be different per organization. So connecting all these information or data points to blockchain is quite a a heavy task to get all these actors onto one page, sharing that information. And Lan, I think you will mention that in your talk also later. So, okay. Any other questions?
So thank you, Hugo, for the nice presentation. So, I mean, I'm also like you, like researcher, scientist, probably blockchain dummies. So how do you see that from our perspective we can contribute, or how we can leverage the blockchain in, you know, the way we work or what we do in our projects?
Yeah, that's definitely a very good question and difficult to answer. I think in our particular case, so now it's a little bit more by my personal perspective, especially when you work, for example, as I work in the development of sensors, I think the idea and the challenge is try to, you know, supply information that is difficult actually to keep or to ensure that is accurate, especially when you are talking about chemical information. You know, the sensors are accurate. So and then the data that you supply to the blockchain is reliable, and this is the challenge. And on the other hand, also I also see as especially when you are talking about IoT systems, that you cannot think about that you'll be able to include in the chain huge amounts of data and so on. So also how to have your data generation system, let's say, that is mostly, in my case and in your case still chemical information, how keep this short and reliable. And I think this is like the two main features that are most of the times very difficult to be together. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other?
Well, we're going to take advantage of this moment to have a round of presentation, because I think that could be important to know who is who and what is your affiliation, what you are doing, what you are interested for this course. So you know already Mireille, Nuria, Hugo, and myself, but we can do this round, Lan, Gianmarco, so please, could you pass the mic?
Yes, I was about to suggest the same. So my name is Wassenaer. I'm from Wassenaer Economic Research. And I'm interested because of the especially socioeconomic implications of a system like blockchain and how technology can be connected to that. And I hope to share some of my findings and thinking with you this afternoon.
Yeah, so I'm Gianmarco Gabrieli, and I'm from IBM Research Europe, located in Zurich. And so I work for as a sensor developer and am part of the TrustEat consortium. So we hope these days to transfer a bit the knowledge that we have acquired in the previous workshops, and hopefully to help all of you to support your research and your interests. So look forward to the presentations later today and the next days.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marta Prado. I'm the group leader of the Food Quality and Safety Research Group, and we are as well involved in the TrustEat project. We are working on the development of miniaturized device to test the different points of the food value chains, and we are very interested on connecting our sensors, learning a little bit more what the advantages and the challenges can be, to be able to connect them to the blockchain and to be able to provide the producers and the authorities a better traceability and safety control of the food value chain.
Hi, my name is Pedro Silva. I'm a PhD student at UMinho in here at INL. And I'm interested in this topic mainly from the point of view of the consumer, how to increase the transparency of the food industry and as such increase the trust of the consumer in such industry, which is currently at an all-time low. So yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Marisol Diaz and I'm also a PhD student from University of Minho and here at INL. And since I work with food, I wanted to know a little bit more the connection with the industry, how we see our work applied then, and how all this chain can be connected, and how can we see our work applied then.
Hi everybody, my name is José Iglesias. I'm the managing director of a blockchain company. We develop solutions for now we are involved in a project with ZenithWings and the IIM of Spain. We are in a European project as well, developing blockchain for the seafood industry, directly from the boat to the customer. And we are here trying to learn as much as possible from you for our project as well.
Hi, my name is Victor. I work in ZenithWings.
Hi, my name is Elena. We went from ZenithWings. We work together in the same project. His name is Pescando, so it's fishing. And well, our work is mostly try to learn in order to transfer the knowledge of this project to all the actors from the value chain. It's more or less.
Hello, good morning. My name is Helena Macedo. I'm a research fellow here at INL in the food processing and nutrition group. But although I'm in this group, I'm not working directly with food. So I enrolled in this summer school because I'm interested in the food sector and I wanted to learn how blockchain applies to this. So it's more out of curiosity.
Hello, good morning. I'm Busen Azgir, also from ENL Food Processing and Nutrition Group, and I'm here to have some more new perspective to my research.
Good morning all. My name is Artur Martins. I am a postdoc research fellow here at INL at the Food Processing Group. I'm mostly interested on the traceability aspect of blockchain and on the food supply chain and how this applies to the overall food safety matters. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Elisa, and well, we are a group of 5, and this is Iria, Ana Carlota, and Soraya, and we are students of biotechnology. We are undergraduate students, and we are working in the group of Marta. So we are interested to learn how really the network and the blockchain really works, and how this is not as similar in university. This is truly explained. I don't know if they want to add something. No?
Hi, my name is Maísa Menezes. I'm a physics student at Universidade do Minho. I came here mostly out of curiosity. I think that food shortage and food information will be a major problem going into the 21st century. And I want to know how we as future researchers and how technology overall can help us overcome it.
Hello everyone, my name is Bruna. I'm a master's student here at INL. I also don't work directly with food. I work in drug design and optimization. And I came here also out of curiosity and also to know if technologies like this can also be applied in the pharmaceutical industry and how us as collaborators can be much more clearer to each other and obviously to the final consumer as well.
Hello everyone, my name is João Menezes. I am a junior research fellow at the Nanosafety Group. I work mostly with predictive models and computational tools, and I would say that I'm mostly interested in how to integrate the sensor data into the blockchain. And yeah, I'm going to do a secondment in IBM for the next 4 months. So yeah, I'm completely interested in the topic, and yeah, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Álvaro Geraldes. I'm a research engineer in the group of system integration at INL, my main interest here is to integrate sensors that we develop in our group to provide blockchain solutions. Also, my main interest is more on the hardware side, more on the software of the blockchain, regarding to, can be on the food and other problems that we want to integrate or use this technology.
Hello everyone, my name is Carlos Shiraish. I'm a PhD student at University of Vigo and researcher at Instituto Politécnico de Bragança. And I'm studying the circular economy in food process and comprehending the farm to fork using the digital tools.
Hello, my name is Bruno Melgar. I'm a junior researcher at the Centro de Investigación de Montaña in Bragança. My main focus is in phytochemicals and bioactivity of molecules, but I work in model predictions and data analytics, so this subject is very interesting to me.
Hello everyone, my name is Manu Ryub and I'm working here as a research fellow in Food Processing and Nutrition Group. I was basically interested to know more about blockchain and how this emerging technology can be implemented in food systems, so that's why I'm here.
Hello, my name is Camila Mendes. I'm research fellow here at INL. I'm directly working with food. So I'm really interested to know how this blockchain, that is in a new trend, could be applied for food technology, especially in sugar reduction.
Hi, my name is Jose Loche. I'm working at INL in the Systems Engineer Group as research engineer. And I have been working this year with machine learning and data analysis on data of grapes from here in Portugal. So I am interested in seeing how blockchain could be used with this.
Okay, good. So I think that is time for coffee. Yes? Fantastic. So all of us, we know who is who, so take advantage of this to speak, to interact, to discuss, and to enjoy as well.
So welcome back. Hello everyone. Hope that you had a nice coffee break. And we now continue with the next session that will be with two speakers that will be online. Both of them work for companies working with blockchain, and both of them have applied blockchain to one use case. That is one of the use cases we are working in the project. So first we will have with us Edoardo Erlini from Ezlab, that it's a company that works with blockchain solutions, that it's based in Italy. So hello, Eduardo. I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for participating in Trusted Summer School.
Thanks to you. So I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
So we can start. Okay. It should be full screen. Is it everything all right? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to speak about... Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
It's okay.
What I want to speak about is blockchain for the wine sector, but also give you a general landscape of the potential of the Web3 for the wine sector, because blockchain is the basis, but there is also more than just blockchain. So I give you a brief introduction about what Ezlab is. Oops, sorry, but okay. I am Edoardo Erlini. I'm the sales and special project manager of Ezlab. And what is Ezlab? We are a small medium enterprises specialized in blockchain traceability. We born in the agri-food sector, and we are still really bonded to this kind of field. And we are working a lot in the sector of wine. In Italy, we have a lot of wineries, of course. And we are helping them in developing digital solution and traceability related to the blockchain, especially for improving quality, safety, and sustainability itself. So after this brief introduction, what I want to start with is the market. We are not going to understand what is blockchain, why we are using and how we are using it if we do not understand the market. So first of all, I want to show you some numbers. They are in Italian, but there is the translation also in English here. What is important to understand is that agriculture is the last billion industry that collect the digitization. Is one of the last, if not the last. So it's not a really evolved field because it's different from the other fields. It's complicated to tell the farmers, to primary producer, how to use digitization. And even if this market is worth 1.6 billions and is growing a lot, this is the Italian market. This is just the Italian market. We can see that even if most of the companies adopted at least one smart digital solution, only the mainly solution is just the common management software. So it's a low digitization environment, this of agri-food sector, and we need to reasoning in this specific field. Blockchain is something really new, is really innovative, so we cannot pretend that companies, that farmers are going to adopt the blockchain really, really fast. We need to be patient because they already need to evolve in the traditional digitization world. If they do not start adopting other technologies, it's difficult for them to adopt the blockchain. So they are moving together. The more this market is going to evolve, the more the blockchain is going to penetrate inside it. And this is a point to start with. What I want to show also is the other side of the market, the demand side, what the consumer wants, what the final user wants. Well, we know that from the survey that the most of the consumers are searching for information before buying a product. They want to know especially about the origin of the product. This is the most wanted data. Also the nationality, for example, the made in Italy is really important in Italy, but also for exports. The quality is another thing that is really, really important, especially if we are speaking about food safety for a particular category, for example, for children, for babies, and others. And it is really important also the sustainability. You know that sustainability has a huge track, but it's going to be better in the next year. For example, there was the wave of the organic food. Everyone wants to know about the organic food. Now there will be the next wave of the chemical residual, because organical shows some problem and chemical residual is going to be the next important thing, the next big thing. All this data are provided directly from the producer to the consumer. What is the problem in this relationship? It's the problem of trust. How I can trust the data that the company is giving to me? How, as a consumer, I can rely on this kind of data, if they can manage the data from the beginning to the end, if they can change the data, if there is no way to prove that these data are genuine, and to punish and to see and to discover if someone is cheating. And this is where we are using blockchain. Blockchain is an instrument that used to guarantee the integrity and the transparency to the data. So another important thing, and the most important thing for the blockchain, is the use of the internal data. This is why we're using the blockchain, because we want to track the values, the data, the information of the producer and to the transformer, and take it in a genuine way, in a trustable way, to the final user. Only in this way you can create a trustable relationship, because this is what the consumer wants also. We are going to see it better later, but they want to rely the company, but they need a way to rely the company. And the blockchain is a way to connect what is the demand and what is the offering of data related to the food sector. Another things that the company wants are data of the consumer. This is not related to the blockchain, but it's something you need to take into account. every time you're going to do a blockchain project, the company that is going to pay you is going to ask for data coming from the consumer. This is the traditional Web2 economy and is not going to compare to go away with the blockchain. It is something that you need to keep in mind. It's still important to work with communication and with data doctoring coming from the consumer. What is also really important is sustainability. Sustainability nowadays means sustainable development goals, the international sustainable development goals. And this is where the blockchain can help us a lot, because we can track the production starting from the beginning in the fields. We can track the registry of treatments. We can track step by step. We can track the transformation processing with data. What blockchain is going to do in this case is registering the data. Of course, we need the IoT technologies or oracles to take the data. And there is still the problem of the gatekeeper. So who's going to check that the data that are going inside the blockchain are genuine? Well, this is still a problem that we have. But it's a problem of the company, not of the blockchain supplier. And why? Because if I declare the false inside the blockchain, it's my problem. In Italy, it can be used, a blockchain data can be used as a proof in a judgment. So if I'm a company and I'm working with a blockchain, I know that all the data should be genuine, should be checked twice. I need to be really, really careful. And this is important because otherwise the company, if they can change the data, if there is not a mechanism of a potential risk for them, they are not going to check the data. The blockchain forces them to check the data, and this is why it is important. There are ethical and social values. They are important because they are really, really difficult to track. They are declarations, most of all, of the companies. There could be some certification, but they are most of all declaration. And this is why the blockchain is useful, because you can fix the data, fix in the stone, you cannot change it, then the data become reliable. It's not just a declaration, it's an information, it's a real data. And this is the same also for sustainability and environmental data. If you can change it, they are not reliable. If they are fixed in the stone, they are reliable because the blockchain is doing this. So how the blockchain can satisfy the market needs? We already speak about it, but I want to show you and I want to see some more data. This information, when you see some data, they are coming from the Polytechnic of Milan. They are doing a great job. The Smart Agri-Food Observation is doing a great job. So I suggest you to check it. So we need to understand why the company are doing blockchain project. Well, in the most of cases, another thing that I want you to notice is that blockchain projects are increasing year by year. You can see here, this is the progression of blockchain projects year by year, starting from 2016 from now. It's important that there are more and more operative projects instead of just some announcement. And there are more and more pilot projects that are important to test new capacity, new experiment, to go beyond what is done now, but to do new things. So why they are doing blockchain project? Well, most of all is for commercial opportunities. And this is why I was saying before that marketing is still really important. Company want to sell more, company want to have more data of the consumer. And if you're going to do a blockchain project, you cannot expect from that. But it's also important that the 47% of companies are doing this for supply chain efficiency. This is really, really interesting because this kind of project needs to go deep in the production of the company. So they are really, really important. They are not easy to be done, but they are the key to go mainstream for blockchain. The supply chain efficiency, for me, in my opinion, is the way to go mainstream. There is also sustainability. It's really important, of course. We already see this. There is the recall for unfit product when there are problems for security. You can recall blockchain is really, really useful, especially if you pair it with tokenization for the recalling of unfit product. And there is the anti-counterfeiting that is really important, but it's difficult to be done just with the blockchain. You need a mix of technology for this. And then there is the part of payment and transaction that is less appealing for agriculture. It's more appealing for other kind of projects. So speaking about the blockchain, we are speaking about the market of data. So we need to understand that every supply chain is a complex flow of information. For the company, these data are a cost. They need to be managed. And blockchain is not just an opportunity to manage the data, but it's an opportunity to transform a cost into a value. And this is why it's really, really important. Because I have a lot of data, I don't know how to do this with this data. The most of the times, agricultural companies are doing this because they are forced to keep in the data, but they don't know how to use the data to produce value. And this is where blockchain is going to help them. Because blockchain is just giving what the market wants, truth and authenticity. Nothing more and nothing less. Here you have the chain of value. Maybe I have another slide here. With the blockchain, you can help the company in providing the label claims. For example, the made in Italy origin. You can ask the tracing process of the whole supply chain from farm to fork. You can guarantee the value of sustainability and the ethical value. You can help the company in increasing the reputation. In Italy, for example, we had a lot of troubles with the tomato because there was the problem of caporalato. Underpaid people coming from Africa, like a kind of slavery for the harvesting of the tomato. And there was no way to distinguish between the company that were working in a good way and in the bad way. Blockchain can help in this way. Fight food, of course, fraud and counterfeiting is another way, and blockchain is going to help a lot. And more, there are more sophisticated things and fields when the blockchain can help you a lot. But we speak enough about the blockchain, and I want to show you something about the wine. So how we manage a blockchain tracking project and how we are doing this in the wine sector. So first of all, we have multiple platforms, and this is important just to understand that the platform we are using for agri-food is different from the platform that we are using for all the rest, because agri-food is a different environment. There's nothing to do. So the idea, what is? First of all, we need to analyze the data. Working in agri-food means that the most of the time you don't have all the data digitized. You need to deal also with paper data. When you have an Excel file, you are happy because at least you have something already electronic. So the first things you need to do is a way of tracking all the data and analyze the data and understand what data can be updated in the blockchain in a successful way and what data cannot. Then you can have the registration inside the blockchain and the tracking process. So you need to understand why the company need to use the blockchain. It's just a commercial use, or they need also to track the internal production. And then you can start with your project. How you then can communicate the data with the market? Generally, we use the digital label. The digital label is just a QR code put in the physical label of the product where the users like you and me can enter and discover all the data of the company. And then we have a platform for tracking the navigation inside the digital labeling. For the same reason I was saying before, that the companies want to know about the data preferences and the customer experience. So the data flow is really important, and this is an example of the data flow. In the ideal world, you have an ERP, and you can connect directly with the ERP platform of the consumer, of the company, and taking all the data directly with the API. But when you have paper data, you need a way to manage this. You need to transform it in an electronic way, because when you are tracking, every single batch has different data, and in a big company it's not possible to charge it manually. Data must be full digitized and automatically sent to the blockchain. The blockchain then can register the data, organize the data, and then the data can flow to the digital labeling. for the commercial use and for the whole market. But some data can be kept secret from the company, because this is something we need to consider, and not all the data are ready to be exposed to the market. Some data are the kind of secrets for the company. So you need to manage a way to keep this data secret. And then you have the tracking platform, of course, for tracking the final user and their preferences. What are we doing when we are tracking a product? Well, we are doing like in journalism. We are asking what, when, where, why, and how. We are doing this question for every single phase. We have phases that we divided in events. And then we are taking the data by asking this question that you see here. For every single passage, you need to ask this question. Not everyone is important at the most time, but you need also to understand when a question is proper and when is not. Because otherwise you are going to work a lot and having just a small amount of data. So you need to work with the company to understand what they want, what kind of data they want, what is interesting, what is not, what data they have, and what data they don't. And then you need to translate it in a format that it is feasible, that is simple for the final user. And this is how we create the blockchain and how we collect the data. Then you have the registration inside the blockchain. More or less, the easier way for doing so is to mimic the traditional production line. So you create your blockchain registration following the traditional supply chain line. In this case, you start from the origin and from the field and going all until you arrive to the fork, the classic farm-to-fork traceability. Is not so easy to have the full traceability, because sometimes you can miss some data and you have to deal with it. And this is another thing you have to consider. So in this picture, you can see what means the traceability traditionally. So you have the farming part, you have the harvesting, you have the transforming, you have the storage also that can be done after or before the harvesting or in both. Then you have the packaging, then you have the selling part, the distribution, and every single passage must be inserted inside the blockchain. What is really important for us is to guarantee the chain of custody of the product. So let's explain this concept. Every time you are going to move a product, you need to track it on the blockchain. For example, we have our grapes. We collect our grapes and we put the grapes in a tank. But then we move the grapes in a smaller tank. This passage must be tracked on the blockchain. Otherwise, you don't have the chain of custody of the product. You don't know that the product went from the tank number 1 to the smaller tank number 15, for example. This is something you have to track even if they are inside movements. Otherwise, you are not going to guarantee the continuity of the tracking of the product. What kind of data we are going to track, of course, generally is geographical context. In wine, geographical context is king, of course, because we distinguish the wine from the origin. Then you have cultivation information. This information generally are underestimated, because generally the consumer, unless this is a biological wine or a natural wine or biodynamical wine, generally for traditional wine are a little bit underestimated. But it's something that is changing, because consumers want to know the treatment, want to know especially if there is chemical inside the wine. And this is why the chemical analysis is becoming more and more important for wine and for the whole food sector. The most important part, of course, is the production. How this wine is made, why is different from another wine, from another competitors or of another kind. And there is also the packaging and distribution, because, and this is really important, to guarantee the quality of the wine over time and over space on the different movement, you need to guarantee that packaging and distribution are made in the proper way. This is an example of the digital labeling that we use for tracking the wine. You have in the first level, level 1, you have the phases. So you have the vineyard activity, the harvesting, you have the vinification, and then there is the distribution part that you don't see in this slide. For every single phase, you have different events that needs to be tracked. I took the vinification because it's the most interesting, but you need to start with the general data. For example, how many hectares, what is the variety of the grapes that you are cultivating, how many grapes you have harvested, how many liters of wine are going to produce with these grapes, and what are the leftovers. And then you can start going events by events, describing what the events is about, timestamping the events, and tracking the data that you see on the third level. So 1, 2, 3, 3 different levels for every single events that you have. And with this method, you can guarantee a proper traceability of the wine. So I put something about the digital labeling just because something is changing from 2023. So in the next year, it will be compulsory for wine company to put information about the nutritional data and the environmental packaging directly inside the label. So unless do you want a label like this one in the pics, where you cover all the wine with information, you need to use digital methods. So the European community allowed the companies to use the digital label for putting in nutritional data and environmental packaging data. So you can decide to put in both the labeling, digital and physical, or just in one of them. And this is really important because it's pushing more and more the use of the digital labeling. I have an example of digital labeling just to make you understand what is digital labeling for us. It's a kind of digital twin of the product. You have your physical product in one end, and in your other end, you have your mobile with the digital twin, with all the information about the product and more, because you can also have other information about the winery, about, for example, if you have the agritourism, and more. It's a way to improve the commercial part, but it's also a way to involve the consumer more and more in the process of the winemaking. So this, we can skip this part. This is an example of the digital labeling. Generally, you see it in your mobile in a vertical way, but this is an example of what you can put inside. For example, you have the information about the tracking of the wine, but you can have also the geolocalization of the fields. You can have also a digital sommelier explaining you the wine. You can have also information about the territory, the company, and all you need to involve the consumer in the process of the winemaking. Because if you are going to use only the blockchain, this is a huge risk because it could be boring. There are a lot of data. It's not something that everyone is going to see. But if you start with something more appealing, something easier, then you can transfer also the information about the traceability, the safety, and the quality of the wine. So I put this slide just to explain you that we can use blockchain directly in the making and in the production of the wine. So you can have IoT devices in every single machinery, and you can connect it with the blockchain, for example, in this way. This is not a wine, this is an apple, and you can have a good seed room with this, but the concept is the same. In this project, we were using tokenization for having information of all the different steps coming from different sources. So starting from your apple, or in the case of the wine sector, in your bottle of wine, you as a company, you can track every single steps to have all the information, even of a single specific wine bottle, not a batch, but this wine, this specific bottle has been made with this processing in this time. And this is really, really important, especially for high quality wine. And then you can have the information for the consumer, and you can decide the level of access of this kind of information, if you want the consumer to have the access of this information or not. So I want to show you then, to finish the presentation, some project. This is the first project we made, and is the first wine ever notarized using the blockchain. It was 2016, and is Falanghina from Cantina Volpone. Now is become Cantina Placido Volpone. I want to show this because it's interesting, because we made the first project with them. And then Gerardo, that is the son of the owner, he's working for Microsoft, and he was working with Ernst Young, and we made the project together with Ernst Young, has made evolving this kind of projects. So we have still the tracking of the project. Maybe let's see if the link is working, if we are lucky. Tell me if you're seeing a bottle of wine.
Not yet.
I'm sorry, so I need to change something in the screen sharing. Give me a minute, please. Maybe now.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the part regarding the tracking. It's in Italian. I'm sorry, but it's interesting because there is the data over every single treatment that has been mailed inside the fields, and this is really interesting. There are some pictures, okay, there is something, but you can track more or less everything. Then you have the certification. So how I can prove that what I'm saying is true? Well, you can go to the certification, and you have the certification. This is a simple project. The most sophisticated projects are completely different. But you can have the certification, and you can have also the token as an NFT inside OpenSea Market. So you can check, and if you buy the wine, you receive also the token that can guarantee about the origin of the product. You can see also where is the blockchain part here. So we are inside OpenSea directly, so you can see about this project all the data regarding the blockchain. Another interesting fact about this project is that sorry, I need to retake my slide back. Okay. Is that Gerardo evolved it again, and in the last year during Vinitaly, that is the fair of the wine, he created the metaverse. So while there was the physical exposition of the wine, he was connecting with the augmented reality vision to show the exhibition also in the metaverse. And this is an interesting evolution that we will see coming in the next year. Another thing I want you to show is the success that are having NFTs connected with the wine. This is an example of a bottle that has been sold for $2.5 million because it was created with an NFT inside. So I don't know if you know the famous Bored Ape Yacht Club collectibles. You can see this monkey, this mutant monkey is one of them. They are collectibles that are sold for a lot of money in OpenSea. And this company decided to put together the wine and the NFT. So you, by buying this special edition of champagne bottle, you buy also the possession of this specific NFT. So this is only yours. You receive with the bottle, you receive also the NFTs using the smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, for example. And this is a huge innovation and something that I suggest to explore because it is of a great value for company. This is a more traditional company we made for Vignalta. This is a tracking of a bottle of red wine made in Italy, in the hills near Padova. And it was fun because it was also one of the first that we made from different varieties and different aging of the wine. Another innovative project that we are doing is this one with Jamin underwater wines. What they are doing is they find an alternative way for the vinification. Instead of putting in a traditional place, they put the wine 50 meters under the water, because there are properties connected with the pressure and with the lack of light that guarantee a better maturation for the wine. What we are doing in this case is tracking the whole processing of putting the winery inside the water, but also the receiving of the wine, because they are doing this service not only for their company, but also for external companies. And we have to tracking everything, especially the processing that is really, really delicate of changing the label. Because of course, if you put the label made by paper inside the water for 1 year, there is nothing left. And we need to track on the blockchain the process of putting the new labeling on this wine. And this is really, really delicate, because you are obliged by the law to maintain the same labeling when the bottle is going outside the company gates. So there are other interesting projects, but I think the time is finishing. I want just to give you a landscape of what is coming. There will be the wine bank that are using the blockchain for tracking the wine. There will be the DAO producer, decentralized autonomous organization that are going to be wine producer, and everything is going to be managed with smart contract. It's something difficult, but it's something that is already coming. There is the metaverse. I already speak about it, but it's a really strong trend. And augmented reality is something also that is coming connected with the blockchain. So I can skip the other project because it's late. This is my contact if you want to contact me. I want to thank you for your invitation. And if you have any question, I'm here open to your questions.
Thank you very much, Edoardo. So any questions?
Just a small question, very interesting. So it's just a question if we can have the presentation after to download it.
Yes, of course.
Yes? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And just out of curiosity, because this afternoon we are going to talk a bit about business model. Could you perhaps shed some light on the business model of Ezlab? How do you start and finance and run the project, if it's possible?
Yes, it's possible. It's not a problem. Well, Ezlab is taking money from two main sources. The first is the public money. We are doing a lot of research and development projects, and this can guarantee you the money to develop new solution and new software. And this is really important also because, blockchain is a field that is changing every day. You need to keep the velocity of the market. So you need always to research, always to innovate, always to find a way to differentiate. And the second part is the private. You cannot rely just on the public company, because otherwise you are not going to be a company, you are going to be a research entity. And then you need to approach companies first with pilot projects, with experiment, and then you need to show the value. They need to see the value. And for them, value is more or less a commercial value, generally. So you need to explain why, by doing a blockchain project, you can maximize your internal value, you can export your value. I think this is the most important pillars of the business model, and this is what Ezlab is doing right now.
Very nice presentation. Thank you. Very good examples of implementation of blockchain. And talking about the implementation, I have a question regarding your experience with dealing with companies. So my point is, in a certain extent, for a company to implement a blockchain solution is like to be naked for providers and for clients. So nothing to hide. I don't know what is the willingness of the companies or the wineries, in your case, to be so transparent. So, I mean, so sometimes I am thinking that the chef don't like that people look at the kitchen, no? What is happening?
You need to do some compromise. This is inevitable. Since blockchain, you are not obliged by law to do a blockchain traceability. So there is not a single way for doing so. If you want to do the farm-to-fork traceability, of course, you need to be totally transparent. But if you don't want or you are not able to do a full traceability, you can decide to skip some data out of the system. What is important is to be clear to what data are inside the system, so are fully transparent, are registered inside the blockchain, and what data are not. This is just about this. What is the problem? Well, if my competitor is coming with more data than me, everyone can see the difference. Everyone can see that I don't have the data about the origin and he has. So it's more about I can put the data, the kind of phases that I want inside the blockchain, but I know that the less data I put and the more I expose to the risk of a competitor that is showing the data and is going above me. So, and this is also interesting because is an important tracking for the full transparency of the market. The first project are shy, I expose some data I prefer to not expose, but in the future, I think that the only solution will be the full transparency. Not the next year, not the years later, but in 5 years, probably, it will be something that company needs to do for law. So this is the direction.
Thank you. I have another question regarding the paper-based registration of. So as you mentioned, paper is still a regular way to harvest data from the production, different steps in the production. And in some companies it's more or less digitalized, but in some other companies it's quite difficult to digitalize this harvesting of data. And still pencil and paper is the basis of that. So how relevant are the companies to implement sensors to automatize this process of harvesting data? So are willing to implement these sensor technologies in the production lines?
Well, the problem is not if they are willing or not, but who's going to pay for this? Because they are willing to do so, but they want someone else that is paying for this. And this is why research and development project and public financing are really, really important. Because unless you are a great wine producer and you have the money and you can do this, you can pay for IoT on every field, unless you don't have the money for doing so, and also you don't have the competencies The competence is to work with the data, because it's not easy. You have different kind of IoT, different kind of sensors, of oracles. You need a person able to manage this kind of data. And we are helping directly the farmers in doing so, but it's not easy, and it's not our work. Our work is to deal with data, not explain to them how to work with the data. So it's still a problem when you need to, when you want to escalate. If you want to a scalable solution, if you have a lot of paperwork to do, this could be a problem. For small companies, and if you don't have scaling problem, you can deal with paperwork. You can, for example, register the papers in the blockchain, and then use this data for the registration and the tracking. Is not the best solution in the world, but this is what we have to do: deal with the paper until it's totally gone.
This is interesting because we heard here in this place from the first winery in Portugal the same reason. So it's expensive to put sensors in the line. But at the same time, I wonder if they are willing to pay to foster the architect for a building millions of euros, and that it's worth. So for me, it's a little bit strange, no? How the companies prioritize the investments in technologies.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because they are not expert of technology, and it's difficult also for them to understand what is giving value and what is not, or what technology is better to start with. And they need more consultancy, but they don't want to pay for it. I think that something will change starting from the next year, because with the new common agricultural policy of the European Union, a lot of things will change. And farmers will receive money from Europe if they show data about the cultivation processing, of the sustainability, and moreover. And for this data, you cannot track this data without IoT technology. So I think they will be forced to invest or to allocate money coming from public in this kind of investments.
Thank you very much.
No other questions? Okay, so thank you very much, Eduardo, for being with us today. And now we pass to the next presentation. That is from Eva Rodrigues from ZenithWings. That is another company that this time is based in Portugal, and she will be speaking also about blockchain applied to the agri-food area. So welcome, Eva. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. So, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, my name is Eva Rodrigues, and I'm here representing ZenithWings. So, ZenithWings is a high-tech company oriented towards the provision of R&I related services in the areas of precision agriculture and Industry 4.0. So the company's activities focus on the development of integrated solutions for the digitalization and optimization of processes associated with the multiple stages of the value chain in the primary and secondary sectors. So we enhance the traceability and support the decision-making process. So we are constantly involved in various projects responding to emerging challenges in multiple segments of this market, namely in improving the efficiency of production processes, the qualification of working conditions in the industry, and the introduction of the concept of sustainability in organizations. So I would like to first to present to you Sorry Wine. This is one of our projects that we have in our agenda. So Story Wine emerged because benefits of investing and on precision viticulture are not clear, especially as regards return on investment. Winemakers are very keen to invest on online marketing, and final consumers are interested into finding out more about wine. So Story Wine uses vineyard data to optimize production and to create stories around wine. With Story Wine, we have created a platform with precision viticulture by creating added value on top of smart agriculture best practices, which nowadays focus mostly on monitoring processes. Our vision is to move beyond the emerging wave of the Internet of Wines, while improving the efficiency and quality of wine production through sensors-based data and advanced analytics. With Story Wine, we provide tools that help winemakers with branding and promotion of products, because behind each bottle, there is a story to share. So, our solution combines different data sources, open data, sensors, satellite. We offer predictions and optimization for winemakers and wine cooperatives. And we offer added value on wine brand that can increase market appeal and thus become valuable for wine distributors. Here we have the scheme, so the farmer with the predictions and optimizations, the distributor with provenance and wine story, and the end user with the storytelling. So what are the key features of our products? We build on open source and open data, and we integrate different farming devices, monitoring and traps. We have user-friendly dashboards where users can define alarms and so on. And we use machine learning for pest prediction and water irrigation plants. And ultimately, we generate a story for wine lovers, combining IoT data and media from the producers. The Story Wine went through story events. So we have for the producers, distributors, and the consumers, weather events. So for example, amount of sun and rain received during a time period. Process events. So a given process was run on the vineyard. Generic events, any event that is reported by a user of Story Wine. And finally, historical events. So that is a part of the wine story beyond the current vintage. In the dashboard, we present the humidity, the soil moisture, the soil electrical conductivity, the global solar radiation, the cellular air quality, and so on. And we provide this type of the analytics with sensor data, weather forecast, historical data from another vineyards, diseases and pest models, irrigation models, and so on. So storytelling, we provide the consumers the storytelling of the product. So the wine info from grape to bottle. So how much sun hours did the grape take before maturing? How was the moisture of the soil for this vintage? How many days the wine aged in the barrel, and who bottled it, and what's the story? So with Story Wine, we went through Diagora. So Diagora was created to add value to Story Wine's innovative platform, which we combined monitoring of wine production, with storytelling as a powerful marketing tool by developing a tool enabling a digital processes of wine certification, registering the steps of the traditional process into a blockchain, therefore making it traceable, decentralized, and reliable for the customers of the end user SME, in this case, the wine producer. In the course of this project, we have worked in close relationship with Cabos Morganheira, a Portuguese winemaker for which we have implemented our use case scenario. So what is Diagora? So this solution integrates blockchain technology to allow the digitalization of the wine certification process through the registration of all the stages of a traditional certification process in a blockchain, making the whole process more transparent and reliable. So consumers may use the web platform that works in the form of a catalog to access certified information of the wines they intend to consume. The solution promotes a trustworthy relationship between producers and consumers by monitoring the whole wine supply chain from the origin of the grapes to the wine bottling process. We've developed this smart solution with the support of Blockchains, a funding initiative aiming to facilitate the integration of distributed ledger technologies across SMEs in Europe. Next, I will have a short video that sums up Diagora project. Let me know if you can hear it or not.
Today, 48% of consumers say current environmental labels are unclear, and only 6% of EU citizens trust producers' claims about their products completely. At ZenithWings, we give consumers access to a storyline of sustainable end products that will offer a view of their source, composition, production process, carbon footprint, company values, all verified in a decentralized manner via the blockchain. Brands and businesses will have a mechanism to certify their suppliers and processes and to provide digital proof of good business and social practices that consumers value. Businesses who wish to convey their story and unique value propositions to consumers struggle to get the message across to the market. This will continue to result in a lack of trust in the underlying process unless a more user-friendly solution is created. It is hard for businesses to source independently vetted agents who can certify their companies and their practices according to these attributes. Sustainability will be a 12 trillion market by 2030, and our bet is that wine chain will be a central part of this story to create a better, more sustainable world. With Morganheira, a Portuguese winemaker we've partnered with, a company with over 60 years experience in the industry, we've given them an easy way to digitalize their production process and offer real evidence that their wine is organic, another standout attribute that sets them apart from the competition.
So that's it about Diagora. So in the line of the work we have done with Story Wine and Diagora, we entered the blue sector in the frame of the Diagora project. So we have this ongoing project that is called Smart Blue Chain. So the main goal of the Smart Blue Chain is the development of an innovative certification process through the creation of an open and decentralized market of transparent and comprehensible certification of sustainable products. In this time directed to the blue economy sector. In this project, we intend to, the certification process, increase the added value of the products and therefore increase the competitiveness of companies. We will have a marketplace on the supply side that would be able to trade evidence about the sustainability of products and operations of the producers and distributors, and ultimately consumers will be able to choose products they trust. So brands and blue products will have a unique ID in the certification system, and the consumers will have access to their entire history, their current badges, those that have expired, and these stories associated with the creation. Therefore, they will have accessible by scanning or entering the product ID or through the API, which can be integrated into the company's website, e-commerce stores, or even in its physical retail spaces. So how it works, this platform? So we created an online and offline certification system for sustainable seafood and aquaculture products by assigning of badges that classify the production process in various dimensions of the product. And we have a verification of the validity of the badge assigned, as well as the entire record of evidence that supports it, fundamentally changing the perception of product value and creating differentiating factors for sustainable products. Who can benefit from this solution? So consumers will have access to a marketplace of certified goods according to different standards to be defined. Certifiers will have access to a marketplace of companies that want to certify their products. Distributors and producers will have they can be independently certified and establish themselves as differentiators through certification. And finally, brands and retail. They will be able to create differentiation through transparent processes. So I have a little video also about this project that summarizes all the things I have said. Hope you like it.
Think about the last time you bought a product that originates in the ocean. If you look at the packaging, certified origin, environmental certification, safety regulations, labor practices, just plain marketing, the labels add up. The result is that large-scale consumer surveys say that these labels sow distrust, and that this is one of the key factors holding back growth for the sustainable product industry. With Smart Blue Chain, we decided to tackle this problem head-on. How would we bring transparency, traceability, consumer trust, and business value to a market that's sinking under the weight of slim margins and increased public pressure to improve its behavior as protecting our oceans becomes ever more important? So we took GreenPact, our sustainable supply chain as a service platform, and decided to put it to good use. Through the Smart Blue Chain projects, we help the blue economy grow and change from the inside. The project focuses on the certification of products from the blue economy with the goal of developing an innovative certification process through the creation of an open and decentralized market for transparent and understandable certification of sustainable products. Businesses can easily plug in their systems, their documents, and any newly built sensors. And with the help of our proprietary AI, we help them rate their processes and improve their business sustainably with end-to-end visibility on their operations. All of this happens atop our blockchain-based evidence record, where information stays private to stakeholder organizations and where independent certifiers validate your climate-focused changes on the go, improving your rating the moment you make changes. Through the Smart Blue Chain project and atop the GreenPact platform, ZenithWings is democratizing trust in products that originate in the sea, creating trusted marketplaces that put real sustainability first and bring higher value products to consumers' hands, protecting our oceans, our ecosystems, our environments, and our economies. This innovative project has become a reality thanks to the support of the EEA grants. EEA grants are a funding program established by Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway that work together in the internal market with member states of the European Union to foster a green, competitive, and inclusive Europe. EEA grants aim to reduce social and economic disparities in Europe and strengthen bilateral relationships between these three countries and beneficiary countries. This program is supported by Ministério do Mar and the national entity Direção-Geral de Política do Mar.
So that it's all from my side. If you have any questions, go ahead. Although I'm not a person with a technical background, but I will try to answer it. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Eva. So any questions?
Hello, Eva. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really, really interesting. This is Marta Prado from the Food Quality and Safety Research Group here at INL. I just wanted to ask you, out of curiosity, what type, you were mentioning some sensors, some sensor data that you use. What type of sensor or what type of data are you guys using in this particular project with the wine?
Yeah, so in the story wine, the sensor part, we didn't make it the sensor part. So we integrate the data that other partner will capture by the sensors. So all we did is integrate the data. The sensors are not a part of our,
Yeah, I understand. But I was wondering if they are just, I mean, they are capturing data from the weather, for example, humidity of the soil and this type of things, I guess. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so thank you very much, Eva.
Thank you.
So with these two presentations, we end up the morning. So we will have a coffee break in 30 minutes approximately, as it was planned. So now you have time to, I don't know, reply some emails till we have lunch that will be served here where we had the coffee break. Also, if you haven't signed this attendance list, please come here to sign it. And if you haven't registered for the winery cellar for Wednesday, please let me know, because we will need to send the number of people attending. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you later at 1:30. So we will have the presentations from our colleagues from Wageningen University.
Good afternoon. I hope you had enjoyed your lunch. May I have your attention? As you might have suspected, I raised a question this morning on business models because I was about to talk about business models this afternoon. I hope you enjoy it, despite a very different nature of the topic. And a little bit of introduction. I and Mireille, we work at Wageningen Economic Research. So we are part of Wageningen University, which is one of the best agriculture universities, especially in the field of food and agriculture and environmental sciences and also living environment. But within the university and research, we are part of the applied research part, which means we carry out a lot of applied research. We work together with governments and industry and also other civil society organizations. And we intend to make our contributions, not by doing experiments, but try to help policymakers and other stakeholders to make better decisions. So I think that's in a way our work. And I think in line with that, finding the right business models and governance is part of our work. So that's my capacity here. I hope, and in my role as in this project as from Wageningen partner, that I can help introduce to you some concepts that will help you in also not only doing research, but also think about business models and things that help to bring your research to broader society and business and create more impact. And you'll have the slides later on, so don't bother to write it down, make notes. So.
this morning, Lorenzo has already set the scene, so we know that in applying blockchain and food system in TrustEat, we have 3 layers. So you guys work at the physical layer and doing experiments, and IBM works at digital layer, and we are mostly working on the application layer, which means we try to bring the technology and underlying knowledge to application. And so our focus is really on applying the technology, introducing blockchain to all kinds of practical cases. But before I start talking about business models, I would do a little bit of check-in with you, like why would you, for God's sake, think of business model when you're working in a nanotechnology lab? So just to make sure you're listening, I would like to introduce you to provide your own first thoughts. You don't need to think a lot. Any volunteer? Why would business model be relevant to a blockchain and nanotechnology research? Yes, please.
Someone will have to pay for everything.
It's a payment.
It's not free.
Yeah, good. So there has to be money. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that? Raise your hand. Yes?
Because it's important also to identify all the actors or like for whom we are doing what we are doing and who can collaborate, who can help us to develop what we want to develop.
Yeah. So you had about money, you talk about the actors because you cannot do it alone. Any other thoughts? Just raise your hands. There's no correct or wrong answer. Lorenzo? Why would you like to invite me here to talk about business models?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, if we have not a business model, that not makes sense. So we need to have this business model,
yeah,
to understand
Yeah, well, I agree. I'm taking stock. Yes, Mireille. Yeah. Yeah. So not our customer or client for whom. Yeah. Thank you. So I think I already have gathered a lot of input for this. We'll happily come back to this later on. But now it's part of the scientific part. So in the next about half an hour, I hope to discuss with you 4 parts. In the beginning, I would like to introduce you formally some concepts that are relevant to understand or to do research on business models. Based on, bear in mind what you just said, money, actors, and the client, purpose, and meaning. So they are all relevant part of it. So that I'll cover in the first part. And the second part is really about when we understand, we know what business model is about, how do we get along with, how do we find, design, and implement business models as a second part. Then obviously to think about business models when it's, how we can find the best model in a context of blockchain research. In the end, I would also like to challenge you to think about business models in relation to INL, to your own work. Is that okay with this content? So feel free to interrupt me, just raise your hand, and then I'll permit you to ask questions or add comments. So let's start. And you just said a business model is important because we need someone to pay for us and we need someone to understand for whom we're doing it, for what purpose. So there are many different definitions about business models and why it is important. So I think it reminds me very much of the picture, which many of you may have seen. If you ask 9 blind people to describe an elephant, one would say it's like a wall, and the other one is like a big spear, or someone else would see it differently, because we all look at an elephant or something as abstract as a business model from different perspective. So be aware that there may be different ways, different definitions in scientific literature about business model, but I think they do share some general features. So business model is always about the way in which organization creates and captures value in different contexts. So that's an abstraction, of course. We will see later in different contexts, but for now it's good to understand that
defining a business model, it's like the famous entoism you describe about the way, like you can name it, but it's not permanent. So the way you describe it is never eternal. It's always changing in different contexts. It's the same with business models. Sometimes people may call it an operation model or earning model or different model, but it's all about creating and capturing and distributing value. So value is important. Value is not necessarily money, could also be other values. For example, fairness or other food safety is also a value, but we'll come back to that later. So once we have like a conception of what business model is, how do we work with it? So like you are scientist is the best way to design or to describe models, use sort of a template. And research on business model, one very often misused way is to use a business model canvas. It is widely criticized, but still widely used because it is useful in a way that it outlines 9 very important components of a business model. And you don't need to read it, but to start with, for business model, any business model is very important to have a value proposition, like what is value, why is value, why does it have value, for whom? So that is, in short, a value proposition, like why are you doing nanotechnology research? Why it is important for you or for someone else? So that is a very central part of a business model. And then, of course, you want to have people to pay for it. Then you need to understand who would be willing to pay for it and how to identify those people who are willing to pay for it. So those are who are your customers. And then when you have a product and you need to bring your product to the customers and you need to have distribution channels. So these are the upper parts of key components of business model that you need to think of when you think of a business model. You need to consider what is my value proposition and for whom and how do I connect, how do I distribute my product or service to my clients. And then underneath the bottom 2 blocks, they are very often not well described. So one is the cost structure. It's very obvious because you cannot get paid for doing nothing. So if you want to create products, a service, you need to incur costs. So you need to understand what kind of costs you're talking about before you think about compensation or reward or payment from other users or clients. And the other part, only a small part, is called the revenue stream. So that is the part that I asked also this morning, who is paying for your activities and services. And that part has very small, only a small block here, but it's actually a very complex topic. And to the extent that there's actually a different research line on revenue models. So how do you create revenue? So before thinking about cost and other aspects, you need to think about revenue. Where do we get money from? Yes?
Can revenue streams not be about money?
Sorry?
Can revenue streams not be about money? Or at least not direct money?
It's not direct, sorry.
It can be, if the answer to a revenue stream
Yeah.
can be not directly money, like exposure, for example. In this case, I don't see there's a revenue stream for blockchain.
For blockchain?
Applied to the agri-food sector. Not
Well,
direct feed of money.
if you think about the case of Ezlab this morning, so the revenue stream of Ezlab, it said it got a lot of public money from European Commission, so that is one revenue stream. The money flows from Brussels to that project. Then it also received public funding from companies that they provide service to.
That doesn't seem sustainable in the long term.
So it's very right. So there are many different possible revenue streams, but how to select them, then you need to evaluate whether it covers the cost, whether it's ethical, whether it's sustainable. So those are the topics typically when you are considering a business model you need to think about. Like, do I have sufficient revenue stream? Will it last? Will it cover my cost? And can I accept it? So these are the research, typically the research questions we would address in any business model. Yes. No more questions? So that is about the very popular business model canvas. But mind you, this is not the only way to do research on business models. There are many reasons for that. To start with, this assumes that it's about one company or one organization, and it's all your own decision. But very often when we consider business model, we also consider sometimes with other partners. So there are many different ways to look at business model. And then we need to think not just a canvas, but also to understand the landscape. What sort of context, what kind of situation we're considering our business models. So one way to look at it is, like, why am I considering my business model? Do I want to make profit? Or do I want to do good to the world? So there's one dimension. Do I do it for my own private benefit? Or do I do it for the public good? So this is one. Then you can have a whole different spectrum of very private for-profit business models and public, not-for-profit or not just for-profit business models. And on the other hand, so this is the purpose of the business model. And you can also look at the level of collectivity of a business model. So is this really about a business model that is of one company or one person, or it's about a collective, a consortium or cooperative? So there you also have different types of business models. So this is a broader landscape of choosing business models. So you see business models of corporates making profits, consortium trying to do good and to the society. This is a way of looking at business model. Also for blockchain, for example, you have single for-profit blockchain business model. For example, a company providing blockchain services, or a collective business model like the whole Ethereum, the whole Hyperledger consortium. So together they try to promote, support the application of blockchain in different fields. So this is just a broader description of the stage of different business models. And then we just look at the canvas. The canvas is very useful for one company or one person, one firm, to understand it's her or their business model. But it's not very useful when you are working in a network. You need to work with others. Then you need to draw many different canvases, and then the whole single one-page canvas is not very helpful. And then we need another type of business model. It's more network-centric model. It's important to make the distinction because our world is changing from more traditional business models to a more platform-based models because of digitalization, because of improved transport and communication technology. So more and more business models are taking place in a network. So this has resulted in a more, I call it network-centric business model. And that has implications for designing, but also for understanding business models. I'll explain to you later. So what has changed if you look from firm-centric business model to a network-centric business model? I think one metaphor I like a lot is the change that you go from sort of pipeline business model to a platform business model. A pipeline business model is very much straightforward. From the beginning, you try to assemble some goods together, you add features, improve it, then you push it through a pipeline to the client who purchases it, and you get the differences in between as your profit. So it's very straightforward. One pipeline, you make products, you get inputs, you make outputs, you get paid. And you typically are paid by the customer, the one who purchased your goods. But it's very different in a platform setting. For example, in a platform setting, you do not sell product to one customer or one type of customer. You can have different type of users, and you can also have different input sources. So you have multiple input, multiple output, and also multiple channels to distribute different services. So it looks like a platform. People can enter from different entrances and go to different places, and money streams flow not one direction, but different directions. So the example of a pipeline business model is very typical, like in the case of encyclopedia books. So you buy a book, so someone made it, you pay for the book. But in a platform business model, an example is Wikipedia. So you cannot really exactly identify who is a producer, who is a consumer, and there are multiple revenue streams. The same goes with Netflix, and airports are also an example. It connects different services, goods streams. So, especially in the case of blockchain application and other type of services, we need to understand that the service creation and delivery is no longer in a pipeline setting, but in a network setting, and that's why thinking in terms of platform business models is important, and I think that's good to understand when we are addressing or finding business models for our blockchain applications in the future. Once you get all the understandings of blockchain components. So that was a bit theoretical background. I think to summarize. I try to show you what are the components when you think about business model, and what is the landscape of business model, and what is the major difference. What are the differences between pipeline type of business model and platform business models? Any questions before I move on? Yes, please. No, it's very valid, very good question. I'm just wondering how other people will think about it. How many of you consider Encyclopedia Britannica is more reliable than Wikipedia? Raise your hand. You know. So, can you explain why do you think it's more reliable than Wikipedia? Myself. Yeah, because you raise your hand.
Because history tells us that.
Hmm? Because?
History tells us that they are it's a reliable source.
Yeah, and Hugo, you also raised your hand. Why do you think it's?
I think it built a reputation.
Yeah.
For a longer time than Wikipedia. But although today I believe that Wikipedia is more accessible, probably.
Yeah.
And it's probably although it's corrected, the number of people that is correcting the information is higher on Wikipedia. Probably the Encyclopedia Britannica is experts correcting the different topics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Wikipedia is open source. I can log in right now and change wherever. I'm guessing that's Luce's point that anyone can change anything.
Yeah.
It will take a second, 5 seconds, 10 minutes until someone changes it back to the correct form. I just don't think it's a good example of platform being less reliable than pipeline, because we believe that Netflix is not telling us lies in the documentary they showed us. It's not different than a documentary that you go see in the cinema. In that sense, Wikipedia is just an example of a platform, not necessarily the best one because of the open source nature of it.
Yeah.
But every other example, there's not a reliability issue with it.
Yeah. I think there are two things we come back to later. First, you said everyone can change the information, which is technically not exactly true. I don't know whether you have tried to add an entry to Wikipedia. It's not that simple. If you add it, it will be reviewed by many other readers who have obtained a level of credibility. Only when many of them approved, the entry will be visible. It's not that everyone can change it. So that is a mechanism of a platform like Wikipedia. There's a validation mechanism. It's very different from traditional authority review process. So you have the editors and their experts reviewed it, and there's one pipeline process. In Wikipedia, that's very dynamic network process. So you have a community of
experts in different fields, and they have some sort of consensus mechanism that you heard this morning. So only when it is approved by experts or people who have the status of being expert can the information be entered. So I hope that just explains why it's not that unreliable. But you're right, it's not that pipeline business model is by definition inferior or less reliable than a network or business model or the other way around. They're just very different. And if we want to search or design business model, we need to understand what the differences are and why one type of business model is more suitable than the other. More questions before I move on to blockchain and blockchain-related business models? Not? Okay. Oh yeah. So we just talk about the difference between business model such as Wikipedia or Netflix. What we see is that there are a very different type of business. In general, they are all platform business because they use one type or other type of platform mechanisms. And to understand a platform business model, I think it's good to have sort of a paraplu or umbrella system to hang different aspects to it, because everybody can talk about different aspects of a platform business model. You talk about reliability, users and communities, and there are more aspects to that. And in our research, we have tried to summarize the key aspects. I put it in a picture here, just to help you to understand the diversity of platform business models and why we are talking about many different things of platform business models. When you see platform business, you see that it's very important to have, first of all, to understand what is the architecture of a platform and the growth path and how to launch it, the ownership of a platform, because that explains for whom are you thinking about the business model, and also about eventually monetization, because we don't do it for, well, if no revenue stream is created, a platform cannot be viable. So these are the key aspects. It's in one way or other addresses actually the key components of the business model canvas aspects. You think about the value and the owner and the customer structure and also the cost structure. So what I would like to do is that I walk you through those building blocks, and when it's relevant, I introduce some examples of platform business and why it is relevant for blockchain research and business models related to blockchain. And to start with, for a platform to work, you need a very good architecture. And architecture not in the form of a blueprint designed, is more about a platform has to work to connect users and producers and people who are on the platform. If a platform doesn't have any user, it won't work. So when architecture is very important to understand who's going to be the creator or producer of the content for the platform, who's going to use it, and how do you attract people to your platform. So this architectural aspect concerns to aspects such as who are the stakeholders, who will be the users, and why would you expect people to come to your platform? So that's the business logic of it. And also what kind of technology do you use to attract a user? What kind of functionalities, functional aspects do you offer to the users? So the same goes to a blockchain platform. You need to understand how do you attract people, and what kind of services do you offer, and what can user do in your platform. So those are the typical architectural considerations that you need to think about when you design a platform. And the next one is governance. And platform governance is important for two reasons. First one is you need to consider what kind of data you would put on the platform. So data-related governance aspects are quite important nowadays. It's more than privacy. It's also about how do you
add value with data, and how do you ensure the ownership and the rights, control, access to data, but also you need to think about liability of putting wrong data and wrong information on it. So these are the typical governance aspects. And the other governance aspect is about the platform itself. You need to understand who's going to own the platform and who's going to decide the access rights, control of platform, and other aspects also liability. How do you arrange different rules, implement the rules on the platform? So if you consider these aspects, you have different types of platform-based business models. For example, if you have a single ownership and very centralized control, you have a proprietary model, platform model. For example, the Ezlab platform, I suppose, is owned by Ezlab, but otherwise you have other different types of platform models. So different types of models, you have different arrangements of ownership and access. So these are all design choices. It's not that one model is better than the other, but it all depends on the context and the requirements. So to have a business model is not enough just to have a design. You also need to think how to launch it. And to launch a platform and the launching process is often neglected process in a business model. I think this is why many business models do not succeed well, because beforehand not enough attention was paid to the launch of a platform. And to launch a platform, it's good to consider what kind of mechanisms you will use in the end to have enough users or producers or consumers on the platform. And this is just a summary of some key considerations. So there are typical launching strategies. Some, they call it a pooling strategy. You can set a lot of incentive to attract customers, and you can do, of course, a matching mechanism. You try to match the people who are in need of certain services to people who can provide. So you provide that mechanism, or other facilitating mechanisms. So the idea is that to launch a platform, you need to think about the mechanisms to connect the potential user and potential provider, and mechanisms to make them stick to your platform. And there's often a problem, like, where do you start? Do you start from the people or the producers who provide the content, or you start from people who would demand the services? This is very often like a chicken and egg problem, and there are solutions to it. So there are articles on how to address this chicken or egg problem of launching a platform. So on which side do you launch, and which group of users or producers do you give priority to? So there are research on it, and it's always very context dependent. But it's good to consider that beforehand, before you launch a platform just in a market. And then, and be aware that any platform business is not like a product. You have a product and you put it in a market, you sell it. And platform business is typically a process. You start from a very a launching phase, and you see who's coming and how does it work and do people stick. And then you consider how to mature a platform. And in the launching phase, the focus is really more on creating the interaction between the provider of the content and the use of content. And typically at this phase, revenue is not the top priority yet. You need to have users, you need to have a bigger community of users first before you can think about revenue streams. And so once a platform is launched, and that goes also for a blockchain platform, you need to think about how to let it grow. You need to have more users, more traffic, and more content on your platform, because a platform with limited content or user or traffic will not survive. So that's a very critical growth path, that you need to have this growth phase to increase your user base and increase the content and services. It can typically take quite some time, and it's a very evolutionary process. If you look at many platform businesses, you can think of the Hyperledger platform. It evolves with different content, different producers and users. And this goes typically through several years, several phases before we can have a really mature platform. Questions? I'm running out of breath. I would be happy if anyone. Yes? Yes?
Do you consider WhatsApp to be a platform and then went through these phases?
Yes, but I think technically we would say Facebook is a platform because it started as a simple Facebook, then it increased, went through a growth phase by increasing more and more services and Instagram, WhatsApp, and other services. And so that is a typical growth path of a platform business model. And the user groups have increased and the services. So in the beginning it was only matching friends, then you come advertisements, then you have other services, and now you can open a shop on Facebook. So that is a very good example of a platform business model. Do I see a question there? No. Okay. Yes.
Is about when you on this process, how the incentives to use the platform
Yeah.
work, and how this should be managed, because I know that could be critical to attract more users.
Yeah. I thought I had a slide up. Just a second. So how do you attract users or producers? So it's really about creating the engagement and the matching mechanisms. I put in very small letters. I call it core interactions. So it's about how do you connect the producer of the content to the use of the content. I made a summary. You can use different wording, but it's really about fun, fame, and fortune, because people need incentives sometimes. So it's either about fun. You make it really fun to do things on your platform, or you create fame, recognition, or award, prize, and fortune. Fortune, well, you provide people reward or for using the service. I think it's a short summary, just memory bridge to remember things you can think along, like how do you engage people to your platform. So, fun, fortune, and fame. That being said, I think for a business model, like you said, when there's no money, we don't have business model, you really need to think about revenues, and one of the major revenue creation mechanism is monetization. Money can be in different forms of currency. I'm using monetization as just referring to how do you get currency, get payment or reward, and the value you created to get it back, capture it. So when you think about revenue streams for a platform, there are different ways to monetize the services on the platform. For example, you can charge the users for a transaction fee. So you see this in traditional brokerage business models, and you charge people for a transaction. So that's one way of monetizing, getting paid for the platform. And sometimes you could simply charge for access. So if you have built a platform, you can charge people for having access to your platform to read data or to download data. So that's one way. And you could also charging for enhanced access. So maybe people already have access, but you can charge them for better access to better levels or more details. And there are other ways. And one also important way for monetization is to charge for curation. Like, of course, nowadays we have all access to many different sources for information, data, but usually you cannot really be sure that they are true or validated or verified data. So in a platform, you could provide a service to provide curated content. So it has been reviewed or peer-reviewed, peer-reviewed. So that's one way. Another way to create a revenue stream. And of course, there are other services. So user imagination, what you can charge people for, charge user or producer for based on the services or value proposition you have. And related to data, I think the other way is to monetize on data. But be aware that data can have a whole ladder of different values depending on to what extent data has been processed, curated or analyzed and distilled out information and wisdom out of data. So data can have a very different level of value. So if you just write on a record and send it to someone else, it has limited value very often. If you could analyze it, enrich it with other sources and together create predictive analytics, then it will be more valuable. So I put a list of potential monetization revenue avenues for value creation. So you could think of data as simply used as a record or as being a source of knowledge, or sometimes data can be used as currency. That maybe requires a little bit more explanation. Like this morning we heard about tokenization and NFTs. So that's another way of using data to add more value. Because then if your data is used to create sort of digital labeling, digital token or other form, it will have more and more value. So this whole value ladder of using data to create revenues. So all this, I think, and the platform business model, very important is that you need to understand not just the revenue stream, but actually what we really need to understand are the value streams. You need to understand how value is created and for whom and why, and in what form will the value be valuated or be rewarded. And to do this sort of analysis, a very useful concept is called value network. This is sort of aggregated form of doing stakeholder analysis, user analysis, value analysis. You put them together, you visualize a network of different actors who creates value or receives value, and through different routes or mechanisms. So once you have this, so I made an example here, just showing if a farmer collects information, what kind of value streams it may arise. So the data can be used for certification organizations. So the certification organizations can certify a firm, the product adds value to the product. So the consumer would pay for the value for the product with certification. So you see how value is created by the farmer collecting more information on his production products, and certifiers adds curation of the data, verification of the data, and eventually the added value is paid by consumer in the price premium that is paid between normal products and certified products. So similarly, if a product, if you just buy it without any information or certification, it may not, the producer may not charge it for higher price. But if a product has almost a digital passport showing its origin and its production methods, or even underlying DNA content, the product may be more valued more, or other people may be more willing to pay for it. Maybe not the consumer, but also environmental organizations would like to pay for it. So then you have a network in which values are going through different actors in different forms. And that is very often the case in blockchain systems. If you think traditionally in a pipeline model, who uses the producer and consumer, it's very difficult to find a blockchain a business model. But if you think in this value network and to understand the value streams, then you can think of different ways to finance different operations, activities, and to reward different users in the ecosystem. It's not moving. Time for a break. Okay. Of course, this is a relatively new phenomenon, and what I just tell you how platform business works, and there are endless ways to monetize inputs and data and other contents. Just to give you some reference, there are some very nice summaries of business models using internet platform as a way to distribute values. I provide here 9 typologies of business models on the web, and which you can use as inspiration when you're thinking about your own business model. I'm not going through all of them. You can read later, and there's also a website with a library of those business models. But it shows that, so if you see the internet as a huge network, and what kind of value exchange process can be, and then you have a lot of e-business models and electronic business models on the internet, which you can also use and when you are thinking about a digital platform business. So that's just, there are a lot of examples out there, and look through it, and when you are thinking about your own business model. To wrap up, I think I have introduced to you a lot of building blocks and different types of business models. What are important aspects to consider and to remember is that a business model is never a static thing. Finding or designing or implementing a business model is always a very dynamic process. You start, you reiterate, and in the process you discuss with other people and getting new ideas. It's a very circular, very iterative process. But we do have some sort of tools and building blocks from which you can play with, you can combine, you can refine, and different components come to your own business model for different topic. So this will be my second part of typical business model building blocks and considerations and processes. I would be happy to take questions if there are any. Not? Yes? Proprietary. Yeah.
And I wonder, because in Europe we are mainly small SMEs in the agro-food sector.
Yeah.
So it might be that one company chooses one and another company chooses another one. And as far as I understood, the interoperability between them could be a big issue. I mean, I think it's more maybe on the side of IBM.
Yeah.
But, how this could be, I don't know, tackled from the business model, or how we can,
yeah.
or from maybe a standardization, that is something that we also discussed, no?
Yeah.
There should be some kind of standardization between the different.
Yeah. Well, let me rephrase your questions. I think if you think in a network, you have different types of companies and different types of technological solutions and data formats and standards. So how can we actually collaborate with each other or reuse data? And that's a very important, crucial issue. And when you are thinking about the business models, so it has to do with the way, to what extent, in what scope you are thinking about your business model, because you cannot expect the whole world is using the same technology and same. But so being aware that there will always be diversities,
And so there will always be the need to connect, to translate, or to integrate. And that is a continuous process, and I think you can never standardize everything. But I think that's a very nice bridge to my next part of my next talk on business models. Because for blockchain business models, it is one important aspect which is an extension to the network or platform business model, is that a blockchain always you need an ecosystem. A recap, I don't know whether you remember, in last year we had a summer school, we talked about blockchain application. I think in every blockchain application you always have 3 layers. So it's about the ledger, like Hugo told this morning, you essentially in every blockchain application you have a ledger that records information. But beyond the ledger you always have people, stakeholders, and you need to have governance to arrange that. And everything around it, we call it an ecosystem. And I think I would like to elaborate a bit why it is important to understand the ecosystem of blockchain when you think about the business model. So what is the ecosystem? I understand it's a very confusing term, because when people from natural sciences heard the word ecosystem, you think of this. So you have an ecosystem, a different plants, animals, and swimming, and different things. But in a jargon or in the technical terms in digital businesses, ecosystem has a very different connotation. I would like to discuss a bit more with you, because it's important when we consider business models. In business literature, an ecosystem has 2 major ways of interpretation. Some interpret an ecosystem as a sort of affiliation. So it's very much a biological metaphor as a marine ecosystem. You think of affiliation. An ecosystem is affiliated with different species. You can think about the ecosystem of IBM, the ecosystem of Hyperledger, or ecosystem. So you think of sort of a whole network of actors and organizations affiliated with a certain geographic scope or certain technology. You can think of the ecosystem of Braga. So you think of the producers, cheese producers, orange producers here. So you have ecosystem that's with all actors affiliated to Braga, to the geographic location. But you could also think of the ecosystem of Hyperledger blockchain or ecosystem of nanotechnology. And the focus here is really thinking about, when you consider ecosystem, so who is part of your ecosystem, and how do you arrange the access and control of this ecosystem? And the other interpretation of ecosystem is to see it as a sort of a structure. So it's more intentional. So you construct your ecosystem as together fulfilling a certain function. So you think about the position of different actors in your ecosystem and what their roles are, and how they are connected together to create a joint value proposition. So in that way we can see the ecosystem of TrustEat as a sort of a structure, because we have people who produce on the physical level, produce the goods, and people who have on a digital layer collect the information and turn it into knowledge or other relevant information. And you have people who market the information or make sure the technology works. So that's another way of thinking about ecosystem as a very functional structure for reaching a collective goal. And so in a blockchain ecosystem, you have typically some stereotypical or archetypical roles. You have organizations who provide underlying technological infrastructure. Think of Ethereum or a Hyperledger. So you have that sort of actors. You have actors who are developing certain blockchain services, business consultants who help people understand what kind of blockchain you should use, and users, regulators, and cryptocurrency trade markets are also part of the ecosystem. So this explains why it is very difficult, or it doesn't really make a lot of sense to talk about blockchain business model, because you need to understand what ecosystem we're talking about and for whom the business model is, and how do they interact with each other. So I think I hope this makes sense why we are talking about ecosystem all the time for blockchain, because it is really an essential part of applying blockchain technology. And I summarized some text. I'm not going to read it, but just to be aware that blockchain or IT-based business ecosystems are very different from traditional business models in the make industry, I call it. So when you will produce products with ecosystem-based business models, a very important component in it is IT development, which my colleague Mireille will tell you a lot, because a blockchain application and an ecosystem business model, it stands or falls, succeeds or fails, all depending on the underlying IT process. So if you don't develop the application or the underlying infrastructure or the data analytics, if they are not in place, not in time, no matter how well the value proposition is, you cannot realize it. So I think that's a point to consider, that in developing blockchain applications, the business models, and a lot of lessons can be learned from development in the IT industry and software development, and especially the digital ecosystem considerations. We can learn a lot from their methodology and development process when we are considering blockchain applications. So that's why it is not strange that we always have to work with people with more experience and knowledge, expertise from software industry when we are developing blockchain applications. So IBM, that's no wonder what we have IBM in our consortium, of course. And that being said, we also see that the challenges actually in developing blockchain applications are, besides all the traditional technological challenges in creating the data, also a lot related to having the IT ecosystem development, the IT components up and running. So that was my introduction on business model and blockchain and INL. And I would like to open the floor, a little bit of discussion. I don't know how much time I have, but just for you to consider what you see, what sort of business models for INL, what kind of business models you are in, and when you intend to apply blockchain to your existing technologies, what kind of business models, opportunities you are seeing and considering. So I wait 1 minute. If that was, I would call upon one colleague or participant to express your thoughts. So would you consider a more like a business model from, if you consider a business model from your lab, what would you consider? And just any questions that you have after this talk? Thank you. Well, if I rephrase, you said, well, traditionally when you develop a sensor, you think about who's going to buy my sensor, use my information, but now you think more, what kind of information can the sensor provide, and not only just to the person who buys the sensor, but also to people in the industry, consumers, and well, maybe the broader society. Yeah. Yeah. Well, basically, this is an encouragement from my side and also from us to think in a value network, to think beyond your lab and your publications based on your lab data, broader to the other potential stakeholders or potential users and beneficiaries of your data and findings. And I think that's the message of business models. I think it's all about it, how to create and add value to as many people or users as possible and find ways to make it happen. So I hope that these concepts and the prototypes would help you in your search for suitable business models. If there are no more questions, I think I would stop here. Yes? Oh, 2 more questions. Yes? I think your neighbor is a good wine lover, so maybe he can add some from the consumer's perspective, whether it also creates value to the consumer. Of course, with the industry, it can create, charge more price premium to the consumers. But on the other hand, the consumer may have more trust, enhanced experience in the wine, if the wine also has better taste or better qualities and assurances. So it's not just creating value for the industry, but also for the consumer, in the sense that the consumer gets more satisfaction knowing the wine is of good quality and produced in an environmental friendly way. Yes? Lorenzo?
Now, just to say that 2 years ago, or just before COVID, we had here internally at INL some discussions about what should be our business model regarding our activity.
Yes.
In terms of, basically the discussion was, we have to license our technology for build or doing or fabricate devices, or we have to give the devices and make money managing the data that so
by yourselves.
It's basically, it's better to sell a service or to sell a device.
Yeah.
And well, this discussion is not finished yet. This is still
I think it's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, because it's difficult to define this business model for an institution like INL. Because from that point of view, we have here facilities that allow us to fabricate some units or to do rapid prototyping. So that could be interesting for other company to testing devices and to.
Yeah.
But from other side, the value of our devices is the data that we can bring with the devices.
Yeah.
And this is the real value, the devices. The devices is not.
Well, I'm not sure whether you share the same opinion, but I see one thing doesn't exclude the other. I mean, of course, devices, you can use a device to create data and information. That's one way to create value, or you can fabricate products. And what I think is that it's without further consideration of the costs and benefits and pricing and also the resources needed to develop the market, it's difficult to tell beforehand which one is a better model. I think that you really need to consider, I think I made a slide of the considerations towards
there's never a best business model. I think it's always an iterative process. You need to consider what is your value proposition, who are the stakeholders, and also the market, and are there competitors in the market who would do better, provide better services at lower costs, and also how do you plan to finance it, and what is your strategy in market your products, and do you have the resources to do it? For example, you cannot develop a business model producing products or microchips without business development team. That will be so those are the considerations you need to take into account when you choose a business model, and that is typically an iterative process. And sometimes you also need to do experiments in finding out how the market responds and what kind of pricing levels would be acceptable in the market. So that is what generally actually in research on business model about searching and the best combination of the market, the services, the value and distribution channel, but also partners with whom you can do it, and what kind of resources you should acquire in order to implement the business model. Yeah, we will be happy to to think along if it's needed. Yes. I think I do see more questions, so I'll be around. So if you have more thoughts and questions, please feel free to talk to me and or send me an email. I would be happy to correspond or to think along. And without further ado, maybe a time for a short break, or I give the floor to Mireille. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Len. So now if we can have a 5 minutes break in order to take some breath and go to the toilet. Yeah?
Very good next step, in addition to what Lon has already talked about and what we heard this morning. First, quickly, let me introduce myself. I'm a senior researcher. I work on projects that involve digitalization in agriculture and in food. Not just blockchain, it really is, in my opinion, technology independent. A lot of the things that we talk about could also apply to other types of solutions. But anyway, I am very fond of blockchain technology, especially for the organic sector. And yeah, well, we work on European projects, but also national projects. There's a lot of going on around data sharing, actors in food chains and beyond that want to create more insights, not just for consumers, but also for a lot of other stakeholders. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm going to be talking about in which scenarios basically users will accept technology. I'm going to try to do that in the context of agri-food as much as I can. And I'll be talking about personas and customer journey. Who of you already know what personas are and customer journeys? Only one hand. Great. Okay, so you can help me out. And to make it more tangible, I've got an example from a project that's really, we worked on this last week, so that's nice to see, I think. And maybe you will have time for interactive discussion, but you're going to be my time manager, Nuria, okay? Thank you. All right. So let's start with the first topic. So user acceptance, basically as part of what we call the MVP development. So MVP stands for minimal viable product. And I think it's also applicable for a business model, actually, what Lon talked about. You can work and work and work on a business model until you have the perfect one. But then you've lost time. You can probably work with a business model version 1 and start working from that with users or with potential customers and not lose a lot of time when the product actually isn't going to work. And the same goes for software or for a blockchain prototype. The idea is that you work with the first version and start from there. So the first version doesn't have to be perfect. It should be working in some sense. So that's a little bit about MVP. On the right side, you see the same steps that Hugo already showed this morning, the phases of a blockchain development process. And they're similar also to other types of software development. So there's always a phase where you start with ideas and what is the solution supposed to do. Also similar to business models, so who is it supposed to provide value for? And mapping stakeholders, and let me see it over here as well. What is the current state? Should we even use the new technology or blockchain? And then the selection, Lon mentioned many different types of blockchain platforms, Hyperledger, Ethereum. That whole process is actually quite, you can take a long time selecting the right or the desirable blockchain platform. So that's a very specific step for blockchain. There are many, many platforms. And then, the future state, what is it supposed to do? How is it supposed to work? Which data sources do we need to connect? Do we need to connect sensors that measure grape maturity, for example? And then, again, you start with the MVP. And the MVP development is iterative. So every time you gain new insights on the solution, how it's supposed to work, and then you can create a new version of it. And that's what you see over here. So we have a test case, we can do a survey, we can test again, we can analyze it. This is just one setup. But then where do we get our information whether or not the MVP is working? What do you think? Who are we testing with? Yeah, go ahead. Hold on. I think it depends how risky it is. Yeah, good one. Yeah, definitely. And then first version MVPs, we tend to test with users or representatives of user groups with low risk, indeed, yeah. But if you have that's why I was talking about WhatsApp, because the early versions of WhatsApp were very, very basic. And what they did very well is they were free, and they gained huge user groups in terms of reach. And then afterwards, they started developing more features. So they use that approach. So it depends. You can also lose a lot of users if your solution is not solid enough. Indeed, yeah, but we need end users. And in a value chain, we have lots of different types of users. We can call them stakeholders as well. I'm going to be coming back to the user part, of course. Just a little bit more about how can we involve users during software development. There are a lot of different ways. You can plan out your entire project, create several stages, planning, design, development, and then testing, finalization. Or you can do it more iteratively, like I just mentioned with the MVP. You can also create bits of a system that are not functioning completely, but let's say we're going to create a blockchain solution, and we're going to start with retailers, or we're going to start at the other end by just making the part of the solution that works with farmers or cooperatives. Or you can say, okay, we're going to build the entire login platform first and make the user profiles ready for all groups. Those are different ways to work on increments. And then the interactive part, the bottom part, is where you can involve users. And that's where I'm going to be focusing on during this talk. Because, why? We talk about uptake a lot in our field when we talk about digitalization. And by uptake, we mean, are people going to use it or not? Are the users going to be impressed with the actual value of the blockchain solution? And this comes from not blockchain, but IoT solutions. So there's a project that we worked on for many years. It's called Internet of Farm and Food. I'll show you a reference later on. And during that project, we researched 33 use cases across several sectors: arable, vegetable, dairy, fruit, and meat. And yeah, we asked all those 33 use cases what they thought about their IoT solutions. Some of them were focusing on increasing profits. Some of them were focusing on less pesticides or more yield. But yeah, we do see that there is a gap to bridge in terms of agriculture and food and technology, or especially the agriculture part, because we have a lot of standalone solutions and experiments everywhere, but we do not yet see huge uptake of IoT and digital tools in agriculture, except maybe the smart tractors that are already produced by big tractor firms, and maybe another few examples. So what's the deal? Well, we see that the lack of uptake can be explained by the actual quality of the solution, the first bullet here. It can be the quality of the infrastructure. It can be compatibility with other tools, or that there is no interoperability, lack of standards. There can be concerns about safety, and of course, high costs and uncertainty about benefits and usability. So, and then another thing that I would want to share is that in my experience in the software industry, software projects, ICT projects they really tend to fail. So we need to be quite aware of the risks here. And how can we increase that? Well, one of the ideas is that we really need to match with the user's needs and the user's expectations, and that the capacities are better matched with what the technology offers. And it's really straightforward, and you're all thinking, okay, yeah, sure, of course you need to test with users, but we're not doing it enough across all technology sectors, I would say. And in terms of agri-food, we see, this is actually from one of our colleagues in the UK, not a colleague actually, but from Dylan. She made 5 categories, or she identified 5 categories that influence user adoption. So the first one is informational factor. So really the user or the farmer needs to understand what the technology can do. Okay, so he wants to buy a drone, and the drone's going to take cameras of the field, and then he can access the data. But then what? What is he going to use it for? Can he identify the plant structure or the crop development? What can he do with it? So what are the benefits of the technology? And some users are very active. We work with early adopters in our projects all the time, but we already know the early adopters. So we're trying to understand the group behind the early adopters and what they need. You have a question?
Yeah. Why are we assuming that the farmers want to do this? Is it the other way around? The consumers want this, and so they are forced to do this to catch up to what the consumers want?
So you're saying, in the end, the benefit will also probably have to be for the consumer, but in order to get there, we first need to get the farmer on board to use it. It's just a preliminary step. But we can, of course, give the farmer information about the user and the benefits for the consumer. And then that may help the farmer to start using the technology. Yeah. So that can be a benefit. But it depends on the farmer and the context and the sector, etc., and how to make him or her understand that. And then we have behavioral and social factors, so age, culture, education, etc. You can just read through that. And also knowledge transfer by other farmers. So if another farmer is inclined to use certain technology, the farmer next door will be more interested because he sees it in practice. And then there's perceived risk and trust in the technology, which are also important factors. And business and economic factors. We see farm size as an important factor as well, because the larger the farm or a cooperative, they're more inclined to have budget to invest in the costs of technology. Then we have the technology itself. Is it easy to use? Is it compatible? Does it provide a relative advantage to doing it the old way or doing it a different way? And the external factors, what is the influence in the chain, and are they encouraged or discouraged, maybe by consumer pressure or pressure by regulations or governments? So these are the 5 categories. This bit is a little bit theoretical, but I'll get to more practical examples later on. And if we look not just at blockchain or Internet of Things technology, but if we look back in time, just in general technology, we see Davis, he came up with this model on technology acceptance. Has any of you seen this model? Okay. So the idea is that there are 2 main items influencing the intention to use technology, not just farmers, users in general. The perceived ease of use and the perceived usefulness. So those are different things. So usefulness is about, can I actually attain the objective that I want to attain? And ease of use is it working relatively simple? Can I understand it, etc. So if they believe both of them, the perceived ease of use and usefulness are in line, they'll have intention to use, having increased chances to actually use the technology. And, well, that was a long time ago, and in between then and now, there are a lot of different models that have risen. This is only one of them, also relatively old. This is from Venkatesh. It's not the reference. I will add it before sending it to you, Anuria. And what happened here is that Venkatesh, he changed the model a little bit. He renamed perceived usefulness into performance expectancy. So what is the expectancy of the user about the performance of the technology? And the other one was effort expectancy. So how much effort is needed to start using the technology? So those still influence the intention to use, but he came up with 2 more: social influence and facilitating conditions. So social influence maps to the categories that I just showed by Dylan, and the facilitating conditions may influence the actual use. So you may have the intention to use the technology, and your social environment is also supporting you in this, but then if it's not working, or if there's technical issues, you won't be able to use it. And this, in the project that I was just talking about, Internet of Farm and Food, we noticed still lots of issues in the field in terms of connectivity, in terms of battery life, duration, in terms of if you want to reduce the battery life, you have to, the size of the device is also very, very, very important. Those types of issues are still here today. We think, oh, everybody has 5G and everything's easy to do. It's not. Rural areas have limited connectivity. Yeah.
These 4 new technologies that doesn't exist and are really new. But coming back to the first question in the morning. So if you have a pad and a pencil and you can record this is cheap, this is efficient, this is so the point is. For replacing existing technologies or existing solutions, that this kind of theories works as well?
Yes, yeah. Whether or not it's
well, I don't know. So it's not the form or the performance. Is so you have an existing solution that works. That how better is the
yes. Yes, you can apply it to that as well, yeah. And then, of course, if a user is already using an older piece of technology compared to a user that has never used technology, you have more chances with the user that's already experienced with technology. So in that case, coming from a pen and paper may be a little bit of a long way, but yeah, you can apply it to both situations, yeah. So that's the model about Venkatesh, and we used both models in our surveys that we did with those 33 use cases. We wanted to know, how does the end user experience working with the product, so with the tools on the farm? What was the experience during the installation of the sensor? Is the farming willing to pay for it? So that's the type of questions that we asked. And you can see a little bit of information about the demographics of the survey. So our survey was way too long, and we had a lot of empty data points, so we also did some interviews. So if you're ever going to do, you probably already did a lot of surveys, but don't make them too long. So this was the way that we did the MVP cycle. So the farms and the technological companies were creating a IoT solution. We facilitated the surveys that could be performed, and then they would start developing the new version. So we were trying to constantly survey them. And there are a lot of other ways to do that. You can involve users in many, many different ways. Workshops, testing sessions, etc. A and B testing online, which design do you like better? So many, many ways. So that's the way we validated the user acceptance. The idea is to help overcome these barriers that I already talked about in adoption of technology. I put up some links here if you want to read more about the report that we did. And this is just an example of the topics that we used in our questionnaire. So usefulness, ease of use, just talked about that. What are the most or least important features? Reasons to use or not use the product, cost and feasibility, and technical barriers. And these are just a few examples randomly about, sorry, you can't see my slides. Yeah. So this is the questionnaire that we did, and these are some examples on what we found. So it is important for me to know the experience of fellow farmers about digital solutions, for example. Agree, this is agree, and strongly agree is the yellow part. So there was a lot of farmers that agreed with that. And I'm confident about using the digital solution. We did have very nice results across all those 33 projects. So we uncovered issues, and we also uncovered that the farmers that we were working with were very inclined to use digital tools. Are there any questions about this part? Yes? No, it's not, because that's what I just told you. I think it's mostly early adopters already that participated in the project. There is one of the other links on a few slides ago. They did a survey on farmers in Europe more broadly, and I think it's a better representation. This was a representation of the project. Yeah, good question. I'm happy that there's continued research on this, because it's really still an issue. Sorry? You mean the 33 use cases? The general one. It was not about bad or good. It was more, I think it provided an idea of differences between countries, differences between age groups, etc. So, I can send you the link, or you can look it up in the link that I put on the slide. So no more questions about this topic? Okay. So, this slide needs introduction. So, so we want to know more about our end users. We want to know more about our customers to make a nice business model that's going to provide us with business. So how do we do that? I already told you we can do surveys, we can involve the users. You really have to know them. And there is something that mainly marketeers and salespeople are working on, which is the idea of creating a persona. And a persona is basically an avatar, or if you like, for your user group or for your customer. And this is an article that I found only yesterday, I think. It's about personas for artificial intelligence. So this article looked into what are the steps, the 5 steps to create personas for artificial intelligence. So you have to first identify user groups, collect information, consolidate the information, create the personas, and visualize them. And now you're thinking, what the hell is a persona, right? So let me just show you first. So I'll come back to these are personas. And these are fake people, and they represent your user groups or your customer groups, right? I'll come back to this. And why would you create a fake person to better understand your customer? Well, obviously we prefer that this information is not fake, but as verified as possible, because you talk to the customer, your end user, and because you did surveys or other types of information, market research, for example. And we do that because we want to keep the design and development focused on the individual users, on the needs, the abilities, and the preferences. The business model canvas that Lan talked about, it also has a zoomed-in version on the middle column that is about value proposition, and it's called the value proposition canvas. And it zooms in on customers' pains even, not just needs, but pains, what's killing them, and what you want to provide in terms of solutions to the customer. So there's really a lot of detailed research that you can do. And yeah, in the end, we want to create products or services that are usable in an easy, secure, and trustworthy way. So these are steps from this article, but you can work on that in several ways. And once you have these personas, you can create what we call a customer journey. And the customer journey is based on information about what the experience is of a customer. So if you just look at the example first, this is the most widely used example of a customer journey at IKEA. So when you go into IKEA, these are the emotions that you get. So you go from great, and you go all the way here to bad. And because in the end, you're going to end up in the large hall where you have to pick all your products yourself. And you're going to be very unhappy because you're carrying all these heavy boxes. You have to pay, also uncomfortable. But then before you leave IKEA, you can buy food. At least you can in our IKEAs in the Netherlands, you can buy food, right? Okay, so ice cream, hot dog are here, and they're not there for just any reason. They're there to make sure that you leave the place with a good feeling. Okay? So that's what a customer experience research can provide you with in terms of a map, a journey of the customer experience. So it represents the experience of a product or a service, and the satisfaction, and all these points that you see on the map, they're called touch points. And maybe you can already think, maybe in terms of your organization, what touch points do we provide on our website or at events, etc. And those are the interaction points that you have. So, that's what a customer journey is. And it could also provide you with information about how you can improve the customer experience. So it can indicate bright spots, and I think maybe the ones in the blue star could be bright spots. And it can indicate hot spots that you need to work on. So very easy. It doesn't sound very scientific. It's like a drawing. You do some surveys. But yeah, this is being done in the outside world. Maybe not as much in research, but so the customer journey. Any questions on that before I move to a practical example? Okay. So I also work in another EU project, which is called AgroboFood. And it is called AgroboFood because it's about robotics. And we don't work with 33 use cases, but we work with innovation experiments. And they're across Europe. And we had several rounds of funding. And these robotic tools, like the example that you see here, like a strawberry picker, they're being developed. And they're mostly in the startup phases. Relatively high levels of technology readiness, but there's no huge uptake yet. What we're trying to do with this project is create a network, exactly the type of network that you talked about, Lon, a network of research institutes, technology developers, incubators, etc., farmers. And we're trying to create a network where the knowledge about these solutions remains even when the project ends and when the funding ends, so that we don't get all these solutions that are not being used, but at least we can still make sure that when the project stops, we still have the network and we can still work on innovation. And so that's the sustainability of the network. So we want to make sure that agro-food is still there when the funding ends. And yeah, the experiments here, like the robot arm that you see, they receive all these types of services. They're being helped out with, for example, their business model. So we have business services. They can receive support in terms of technical support if they want to know more about the materials of the robot arm. And also, they are being helped to search for partners in the ecosystem. Anyway, that was a little bit about the project, which is interesting because we're also trying to find a good business model for the network. Then, to the personas. So why did we do this? In the network that we want to make sure that exists even when the project ends, we have all these types of people, and they're the ones that are looking for these services. And we kind of know who they are, but we don't really know what they want. So we're trying to create a customer journey. And a persona is not just an image and just a title. No, it's very detailed. So it describes all these needs, frustrations, motivation, and goals. It can even show you what types of knowledge they're interested in. And yeah, that's what it looks like. And it really provides you with a lot of information and a lot of insight. This is an example of the customer journey map that we created last week. And it looks kind of complicated. And this is not backed up yet by questionnaires. This is just what we think is going on. So we're going to do another one based on actual data. And then we can know what we want to improve. I'm not going to take you through the details, but this is what it can look like. So before you fall asleep, can I ask you, what are your reflections so far after hearing about personas and the customer journey, and maybe the development cycles and the MVP development? Yes?
Maybe with these personas, the risk might be decreased.
The risks might be decreased? Yes, exactly. That would be my conclusion after all these questions also. But yeah, but why, how does that work?
In that case, we are creating something just for a specific person or specific customer or consumer. So it helps us to give more perspective in which spots that we need to improve or not to put. So
yeah.
In that case, the risk that the product will not be accepted would be decreased.
Yeah. Exactly, and it looks so simple, but we just don't take time to think about who is the customer or who are we doing it for? What does he or she look like, or how does that work? What type of person is that? Yeah, and that's exactly what you can try to prevent. And yeah, the chances are better if you understand who you're doing it for. And I think that's a similar message with the business model canvas, also to know your customer segments. This is just a little zooming in on that, yeah. And would it make sense for INL to work with personas or customer journey for maybe parts of the research? Give it some thought.
I think it would be actually interesting to design the research.
To design what?
The research, because when you deal with some problem, to understand, we usually also discuss for solving some problems, we should at least not thinking this in very detail, but at some point, especially when we are trying to develop some solution that is competing with some other one that is already established.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, in the end, it's about viability of your solution, of course. Yes. Yeah. And I think during the break, we were discussing this with Lorenzo also about research, that we're researching our own babies and making them grow. And what was your wording on it? You said something about...
In my group?
Yeah, or that we don't really have enough time or reflection to think about what our research is going to provide. Yeah.
I can help. I think the point is, as researchers, we think our results are like our babies. We think they're the most beautiful baby in the world. People would come to us and beg for the babies. Reality is different.
Yeah, blinded by love, you said. Now I remember. Blinded by love. Yeah. So maybe you need some time to let it sink in. And I think it's very, very far away from your daily research operations, but and maybe it's more suitable for certain departments that are supporting research, but it can be valuable. And then maybe who do you all understand who are the customers of INL? Does that pop into your mind, or is it something you have to think about? Mm-hmm.
If you're problem solving, the person that's presenting the problem, that's your customer. If you're building knowledge, that's really not a customer, science people. Just trying to figure out why does this work this way.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly how I'm going to fix this for this company that has this issue.
Depends on the type of research.
If you're doing more, basic is not the word.
Fundamental.
Yeah, research, I don't think that's a customer per se. If you're working with a company like in our group, we're working, they has several projects with specific companies that want to solve specific problems, then I think the persona can help because the company should provide you with the persona because they're the ones who want the problem fixed, solved. So they have to know what their customers want, or in collaboration with you, decide what the customers actually want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's further away from fundamental research than from applied research. But even then, you're researching some fundamental problem, and somebody needs to know about it in the end because somebody needs to read your research, right? So you always have a customer, I would say.
Perfect. In that scenario, it's a very generic customer of where is the world trending to.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to apply to projects and they have to have interest in the general public in order to get funded. They don't just get funded just because.
It's maybe more difficult to identify specific customer groups. Yeah, I can see that. A community? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be anything. We can speak about demographics, we can speak about regions, we can speak about languages, types of people, interests. It's really, you can make anything out of it, yeah.
Based on current issues.
On current issues?
Yeah, so you interview people and then build a profile of what those people like, want, and need.
Yeah, you ask them about their issues, their pains, their needs, and how they would like to.
How would you apply that? Because in science you have to be a step ahead. So you have to look forward to what might be needed in 10, 20 years. How would you apply that to a persona?
Yeah, difficult. Maybe not. I would have to think about that one. Yeah. Because I would assume that the potential customers are aware of those problems. So I think it's more in terms of something that a customer can actually feel themselves in the moment of time. I think it's difficult to do that for future needs that they're not aware of yet.
Yeah, we tell them. We tell them, you have this problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we can tell them, you have this problem now. Yeah. And where would you get what would a persona look like? But then you can imagine what a persona, how would that research community be represented by one persona? It's really difficult. The fact that you have to pinpoint it to one person and make that person represent the entire group makes you have to take some decisions on who that persona is. And that's also valuable because then you get, we have to create another persona now because it's actually 2 user groups. So, or maybe 3 or maybe 4. So we ended up with 6 and we started with 3. So it's very valuable. And where would you get the information for a customer journey at INL? Marta. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because once you understand the pains, and maybe research again is not the best match with personas, but once you understand the pains, your technological solution may not be sufficient or may not be solving the exact problems of what you've discovered. So that's why we don't want to talk about this. Right? That's why we don't want to understand the pains and the needs of customers and users, because then we have to go back to the drawing board. And then we spend all this money on our first version of the solution. Yeah, that's why we don't do this. Okay, any other questions? Because this is my final slide, actually. No? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mireille. So now this is the end of the presentations for today. So we would like to do an INL tour for those that will be curious to know about INL. Lorenzo will be doing it together with Marta Prado. And yeah, after that, at 4, we will be having a cocktail with a wine tasting. So we invite you all to stay, if you are not doing the tour, to stay a little bit more at 4 to do this cocktail and the wine tasting with Natasha Fontes from Sogrape. Okay? Otherwise, we see you tomorrow at 9:30 for the technical workshop. Thank you.